why vote? If you feel like they're going to miscount your ballots, why participate? By the way, that is a perfect graphic for this conversation. And I wonder, even if 2% of Republicans stayed home because Donald Trump told them your vote doesn't matter, he keeps telling them that the election is rigged, that the so-called big lie that Joe Biden won, this is his mission. And he may have succeeded in keeping some Republicans at home. And I think it's a very big story and one that we're going to analyze in the days to come.
Fascinating. Look, I just want to bring some breaking news to our audience and get your perspective on it. We're hearing that the Pennsylvania Senate race has actually just been won by John Fetterman, which means it's the flipping of a key state for the Democrats. That's significant.
It is significant, and it means that the only state that now is in the way of the Democrats keeping the Senate is Georgia. And all eyes will go to Georgia. And this is the second time in 2 years that Georgia's been the deciding state in the U.S. Senate. They like being the center of attention. Well, now the entire news media, the entire world is going to descend on Fulton County to figure out what happens, because I believe that when all the votes are counted, neither candidate right now in this Senate race will have a majority. And so they're going to have to do a runoff in a couple of weeks.
Goodness, and that's been a really kind of dirty race, if you like, hasn't it? Anyway, with Herschel Walker endorsed by Trump, you know, big football star over in Georgia, first time into politics, but talking about anti-abortion, and then this revelation that actually he'd paid for a girlfriend of his to have an abortion, so claimed to be a liar by his own son, a hypocrite, and actually it's been presumably quite damaging for the Republicans in Georgia, that race.
And then how do you explain that he got exactly the same number as his Democratic opponent? Maybe the Democratic opponent is too extreme for Georgia. Maybe the Democratic opponent, Warnock, doesn't represent the people of Georgia. I'm not saying that that's the case, but you have two candidates there that are less than ideal in a state that's been through this situation 2 years ago, and it's about to go through exactly the same situation right now. In one sense, it's American democracy that works because you have a runoff and the Democrats and Republicans are evenly divided. But in another sense, in the sense that I'm most afraid of, that you're going to have more people that believe that these elections are not run the way they should be run.
Well, Dr. Frank Luntz, really good to talk to you this morning. And thank you for staying up so late for us. I know it's been a very crazy election night for you, but we really appreciate your analysis.
Cheers. It's my honor.
Ah, lucky 13. There we go.
Yeah,
look, thank you for joining us this morning. Do stay with us. We've got so much for you throughout the course of the morning, and we'll be finding out after the break how the system's failing people, specifically with bipolar disorder. Really sad issue, this.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good morning, you're watching Breakfast with Isabel and Ellie. The time has just gone 27 minutes past 6. Thank you so much for your company.
Still to come on the programme this morning, new figures have revealed that councils have paid out £32 million in pothole compensation. That's over 5 years. At 6:45, we'll be speaking to Mr Pothole himself about how he thinks the cost of living crisis has been a disaster for Britain's roads.
And at 7:45, are we looking in the wrong place for the answer to the energy crisis? We're going to speak to a farmer who thinks poo power, yes, you heard that right, or biomethane could be the solution to our energy woes.
Get in touch with all the topics we've been covering this morning. Let us know your thoughts. Email gbviews, gbnews.uk, or tweet at gbnews.
Now, the mental health charity Bipolar UK is calling for an immediate overhaul to our healthcare system, as they say millions with the disease are being failed.
This comes after research conducted by the charity found there's a delay of being diagnosed by up to 10 years.
Well, the CEO of Bipolar UK, Simon Kitchen, is with us now. Good morning to you, Simon, and thank you for joining us. So first of all, for people who don't know, what is bipolar? Because when you think about bipolar, you might think of it as having almost two personalities, but then you're bordering into schizophrenia. So what is the difference between those two?
Well, Ellie and Isabel, thank you so much for inviting me on and talking about this really important topic. So there's a big difference between bipolar and schizophrenia. So bipolar is it's a mood disorder. So people have periods of depression, where they obviously have very low moods, and then they also have high moods, which is the moods that often don't get picked up by the GP. So they might experience lack of sleep is a key symptom of that, overspending, hypersexuality as well. So it's a mood disorder, so very different from schizophrenia.
But absolutely life-altering, and I was reading 20 times above the normal suicide rate for people that suffer from bipolar, which is just truly shocking. And if people are waiting 10 years for diagnosis, for treatment, then they've got a high chance then of committing suicide.
It's absolutely horrendous, the figures. So having bipolar increases the risk of suicide by up to 20 times. And we estimate, tragically, there's over 1 million people living with bipolar in the UK, and between about 5 and 12% of all suicides in the UK are by people living with bipolar. And so we estimate it's probably at least one a day, which is a truly horrendous figure. But that figure can be dramatically reduced through medication and specialist treatment and support. So if there's anyone out there on your show now who's living with bipolar, there's huge amounts of hope, and there's so much that we can do to be able to tackle this really big problem.
And how do you manage bipolar if you have it? Is it medication or is it exercise? I mean, what can help you if you have the condition?
Ellie, all of those things really help. So medication has a massive role to play. So for about a third of people, if they take lithium, that pretty much sorts them out. So there's loads of people out there who are living really amazing lives, living with bipolar.
No side effects from that?
They have to have regular blood tests, but they've done it with a dosage now that it's at a much safer level. It had a bad reputation from the 70s, but now it's a lot better. So it's all the psychiatrists and academics that we talk to about this really recommend lithium. And our community also say it has a massive benefit on them. But there's other lifestyle things that can be done to really help people. So sleep is probably the most important thing, and that helps absolutely everyone, regardless of whether they have bipolar or not. So getting the 7 or 8 hours sleep every night, perhaps doing early morning breakfast shows is probably not the best thing for that.
I'm not in the best way today.
7 hours between us last night, if we were lucky.
You doing the lunch.
But certainly, if you can get enough sleep, that makes a massive difference. But also lifestyle stuff like doing regular exercise, that will help with it. Not having too many changes in your life at any one time. So stress can be a big trigger for people. So don't get married, start a new job, or go on holiday all in the space of a week, which is what I do.
Holiday is stressful.
So, yeah. Well, actually it is. A lot of people, when they go on long-haul flights, they're not getting the sleep. A lot of excitement can really trigger people. It's a really cruel condition because often the things that are really good things in people's lives can trigger people to have an episode. So it might be having a baby can be a big trigger for a lot of people. So getting married, twice as many people were triggered by starting a new job as they were by substance misuse. So it's a real cruel condition, but there's so much that we can do to support people living
and
with
you've
it.
surveyed people with the condition, and I found this fascinating. Nearly half of those who have the condition were classed as clinically obese, and lots of them saying that actually ahead of getting access to medication or a psychiatrist, they'd really like access to a PT, personal trainer, to try and help them.
Absolutely. I mean, people with bipolar, a lot of them have to take medication for the condition. They're not able to get the medication reviewed on a regular basis, so they're often taking too much medication, and it means that they put a lot of weight on, which is a really bad side effect. So people with bipolar die on average 10 to 15 years younger than they should do, and a lot of that is from cardiovascular disease. So actually what people want to have is to be supported to be able to manage their weight, and getting regular exercise and be able to have a personal trainer would be a massive benefit to them.
Can I ask you, Simon, I think of Kanye West when I think of bipolar, because we've so publicly seen him having these manic episodes and then these long periods of quiet. People often talk about it being connected with genius, don't they? These manic episodes, and he certainly is very productive and creative during those times. I mean, when you look at Kanye West, do you worry that he's taking his medication, or I just think he's quite a high-profile case study, if you will.
Well, I can't comment on anyone's individual, and I'm not a doctor either, but certainly it's well documented that he's living with bipolar, and there's a clear genius there and a brilliance as well. A lot of people with bipolar experience hypomania, which is it's not quite the same as mania, but people are very super focused. They can be really productive. It's a bit like being on a permanent adrenaline rush for like kind of weeks or months on end.
And they don't sleep or something for days during those periods.
So their sleep patterns will really reduce, and the big risk is that then people tip over into like into a manic episode, and people can experience psychosis and so forth.
And Simon, as you say, I mean, it's cruel really for people who live with this condition. It's really debilitating in their lives, but it's also really difficult for their loved ones, for their family to have to watch somebody go through that. I mean, for people who are perhaps watching at home who know somebody with bipolar, somebody's just tweeted me actually saying they have a loved one with bipolar. How best can they support that person?
So we've got a mood tracker app, so being able to support the loved one with managing the mood is really important, and doing it as a family is really, really vital. So a lot of the lifestyle changes people need to put in place around kind of having a slightly slower pace of life sometimes, going to bed at 10 o'clock, when all your friends are out partying, like doing things like that, which takes quite a lot of self-discipline. So family members be able to support people to make those lifestyle changes can be really important. And then helping people with medication management, helping them spot changes in mood is so important, because one of the crucial things about bipolar is that if you can catch a mood episode from becoming too high or too low earlier, then it has a massive impact in terms of being able to kind of nip it in the bud. So family members have a key role to play, but so does the NHS as well. So.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks.
really
to
good.
Leave it there. CEO of Bipolar UK, Simon Kitchen. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Now, after the break, we'll be going through the papers with David Mellor and Emma Wolf, so stay with us.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics. and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's just gone 6:37. Time to bring you up to date on the latest headlines this hour. And Sir Gavin Williamson's resigned as a minister, saying allegations about his conduct are becoming a distraction to the good work of the government. Comes after the former Deputy Chief Whip, Anne Milton, claimed he tried to use an MP's financial difficulties as leverage. Sir Gavin denies bullying and has vowed again to clear his name.
NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg will visit 10 Downing Street later. The meeting is seen as a sign of how important Rishi Sunak views the role of NATO security as Russia's war in Ukraine continues.
A leading charity is warning that the cost of living crisis is driving food banks to breaking point with record levels of need. The Trussell Trust says almost 1.3 million emergency parcels were handed out in 6 months, with almost 500,000 going to children. 1 in 5 people referred to its network are from working households.
Well, it's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning is former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. Good morning to the both of you. David, should we start with you then? And Sir Gavin Williamson quit late last night over new claims of bullying. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a self-inflicted wound, and quite a serious one. I'm looking mainly at the Times, where it's the front page, Williamson quits amid new claims of bullying, and then there's a lot of stuff on an inside page, page 6, which includes what Rishi Sunak will not want to read, Sunak's judgment in question analysis. I mean, Gavin Williamson is a twerp.
There he goes. Yeah.
But that's the bottom line, isn't it? He's a twerp. The moment I heard him do an interview, I thought, this man is a twerp. And I don't understand why anyone would think, you know, he having been sacked by 2 prime ministers, who would want to be the third? Why was he brought back?
In practical terms, because he couldn't afford not to have him in, presumably, along with Suella Braverman. Both of them brought valuable numbers to his leadership bid at a time when the party desperately needed stability and a unity candidate.
But if the party needs stability, it doesn't appoint. Look, Suella Braverman, who I either like, actually, I have to tell you, I think she's a toughie, and we need a few toughies in politics, but she needed to rest on her laurels for a bit, because you cannot, as Home Secretary, leak things or through your private phone. I mean, this is just not how it's done. With Williamson, I mean, there are quite a lot of papers where they attack him. See, you cannot have a man with that many enemies rolling around, and it seems everyone is against him. And therefore, because, I mean, this business about, inviting this chap to slit his throat. I mean, I managed to get through 11 years as a minister, and I never invited any of my civil servants to slit their throats.
Well, that's
generally, I would not recommend it
I have
as
heard
a way.
some commentators saying that that's, fairly common language for whips to use. No? OK, that's...
It categorically is not common language. And, most sensible ministers get on well with their civil servants. The civil servants aren't there to destroy you. They're not there to damage you. The art of working with the civil servants is to realise how bright a lot of them are and get the best out of them. And if you feel a civil servant is not really committed to what you're trying to do, he is gently moved on. But I think the trouble with Williamson is he was a disaster waiting to happen. It was rather like, an unexploded bomb that they wanted, that Sunak chose to put in his lap. And this is the serious thing for Sunak, and that's what the Times analysis says, Sunak's judgment in question. Rishi Sunak is plainly a cut above his predecessor. He's plainly a very bright man, plainly a civilized man, but he makes mistakes, far too many of them. I mean, ludicrous photo where, he's prevailed upon to go to this COP conference. He could just as easily have not gone. And there he is, the far left, you have to sort of have a blow-up to see him there. Usually the place reserved for the president of Upper Volta. And there he is there, and you think, who is advising this man? You see, again, I'd just make the point, Margaret Thatcher was a toughie, as I know only too well. And she certainly was willing to be very tough with me, tougher even than my mum was. But I tell you that the point is, Margaret Thatcher needed a tough chap who knew what was going on to make sure she didn't make the wrong judgments. He was called William Whitelaw, Military Cross in the Second World War, tough fellow, and he would tell her what she needed to know. Who is telling Sunak what he needs to know? This is the problem.
And Emma Wolf, I suppose, just reading the papers this morning, you get a sense maybe the honeymoon is coming to an end already, and you can only assume that's going to get worse for Sunak as we head into the autumn statement next week. And you've chosen a story on the front of the Express. I mean, looking at the triple lock specifically, I mean, he's planning to honour that, but at what expense, and how is he going to do that?
Well, as you say, this is ahead of the autumn statement that we're all agog for on November the 17th. The Daily Express are claiming a victory for their readers. Their 300,000 voices have been heard, they say. This is Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt. It looks like they will honour that pledge that was made in the 2019 manifesto. I think this is a really, really important part of the statement, of the, basically it's a budget, isn't it? In terms of, increasing pensions and benefits, a lot of people, working people now on universal credit, and increasing those in line with inflation. It's really, really important, and it's part of Rishi Sunak's, I think, determination to get the ship back on track, to get the train back on the tracks ahead of a general election in the next couple of years. Pensioners are the ones who vote, and they often are the ones who vote Tory.
But, David, 30% of those live in properties worth over £1 million. And, what expense is this very expensive policy going to come at? I mean, how are they... I was reading this morning, they're talking about a 50 pence rate of income tax for the top rate earners. They're talking about stealth taxes in terms of council tax. These are things that are also going to really upset Conservative voters.
Of course they are. And, look, I have a confession to make.
Go on.
I'm a pensioner.
And I presume you're one of the 30%.
No, you should reel back in horror and say, no, surely not. You only look about 35.
That was the response.
Okay, anyway, we'll take that one again, OK? But, the reality is, the idea that pensioners are all short of money is nonsense. And this triple lock, the thing about getting rid of inflation is you get rid of inflation by bearing down on it. What you do not do is build in inflation by giving increases either in wages or in benefits that actually reinforce inflation. And I think this is such a mistake. And, but obviously, when we think of a pensioner, we think of some sad old soul living on the 25th floor of a council tower block without a penny to bless herself with. Well, there are people like that, and they can be helped in other parts of the social security system. But what a lot of people are pensioners who can perfectly well afford their little trips to Tesco's, and I'm a big Tesco visitor, and I buy my food, and to be honest, it doesn't matter to me what the pension is. I don't say that to boast. I say that because there are lots of people like me, but they never form a part of this argument.
But there are a lot of working families and working people who are on universal credit. There are a lot of pensioners who do need that money. And
but then they're on universal credit. You're making the point for me.
I agree with you that there should be a mechanism whereby pensioners, wealthy or well-off pensioners, comfortable pensioners, don't get the winter fuel allowance, don't get their free TV licences, don't get the uplift in the pensions. But I'm afraid that actually a lot of people do need this uplift in line with inflation.
Sorry, forgive me, maybe I'm not at my most clear at this hour of the morning. I'm making the point, as you'd expect me to do as a former Chief Secretary of the Treasury, that money goes to those in need. And it goes to those in need by an assessment which allows things like universal credit to be paid. What you don't do is find a random 100 pensioners and give them all the same increase, because some will need it and some won't. And it's difficult, I think, with some of these new ministers to actually persuade them that public money is not a cheap good. It's not something like Boris used to think, oh, chuck some more money at it. And what you need to be able to do, if we're going to purge inflation, is stop building inflation in by these automatic increases way above what they ought to be.
We also need a Bank of England who does their job. Their job is is to keep inflation at around 2%.
And they've failed to do it.
What have they been doing? They're literally asleep on the job.
But has any country got inflation at 2%?
No.
We can certainly agree on that.
And the problem with inflation at the moment is it's. I mean, David will know a lot more about this, but it's a more complicated situation. Inflation at the moment, isn't it? It's also the war in Ukraine.
I think the governor of the Bank of England should be a surprise addition.
To the jungle.
To the jungle, and bits of him could be eaten.
Right, David, should we have a look across the pond then to the midterms going on in the US right now? The polls have closed. It's not the red wave that was expected,
Exactly.
It looks at this point.
I mean, this is where papers obviously are at a disadvantage if you only read the hard copies, because they're going to be hours behind. But of course, a lot of us read our papers online, and then you get the up-to-date situation. And it appears that what has happened is that the Republicans have not made the gains that were to be anticipated. The Republicans will take over the House, but they are not present, it presently looks, going to take over the Senate. Although it comes down to the wretched state of Georgia, and there'll be all manner of messing about as they spend several days trying to work out who won, just as they did last time. But I think a lot of this comes down to Donald Trump. I mean, one of the reasons why I thought some of the things in the papers are so good is Donald Trump basically threatening Ron DeSantis, saying that if he runs, all kinds of things will come out about him. And, you know, I've got to say that this is more like, you know, you keep thinking, am I watching American politics or am I watching The Godfather? You know, awful.
Yeah. We talk about blue on blue over here, the red on red already before he's declared that he's running, and you know,
and the Republicans are red in America. How dare they? You know, it's confusing for all of us, isn't it?
Any thoughts on what's happening in the States?
Very exciting. I can't wait for Donald Trump to make his mind up about 2024.
You want him to run on Tuesday? Yeah, just for the entertainment factor, or
why shouldn't he? If people want to elect him, I think it's absolutely... I'm just sick of the bleeding heart Liberals. I think it would be great fun if Trump decides to run.
Interesting.
Mystic Mellor feels a prediction coming up. Okay.
Go on.
So the prediction is this. If Trump runs, the Republicans will not win, because there are enough people, a silent majority in America, who are capable of being disgusted by Trump, and they will not vote for him. Don't forget, the Democrats have far more members than the Republicans, so Republicans only win when they have a good candidate, and usually when the Democrats have got a poor candidate. Trump is not a good candidate.
I do think it was really interesting. We were just talking to Dr. Luntz out in the States, a huge name over there, and he was saying that actually the effect of Donald Trump saying that he'd won 2 elections effectively, but you know, even though the courts and serious audits have proved that actually, no, he lost that election fair and square, the fact that he's pushed that narrative so strongly has actually had a detrimental effect on Republican turnout, because people have stopped trusting the system, and he thinks that's going to be a huge story over the next couple of days. I mean, that would be an interesting plot twist in all of this.
Exactly.
And also, don't forget, Trump didn't win that election. He was, I think, 2 or 3 million behind in the popular vote. It's just in America where it's, you know, you vote in your state and then the states come together to form the electoral college for the president. Trump never won the presidency in terms of a plurality of the votes. And the worry is that Trump will so undermine some people's confidence in America. Look, Trump led an insurrection. Trump inspired, and some of us think led, an invasion of Congress.
Well, some say he just made a speech, didn't lead an insurrection. Certainly he wouldn't... I mean,
no, he wouldn't agree. I appreciate if he was here, he'd probably threaten me with all kinds of terrible things coming out about me. But I think at a certain point, people in America have got to stand up for the rights of American citizens to vote and to have confidence in American democracy. And they don't at the moment, or at least a lot of them don't.
I don't know where the time's going. We've got to leave it there. David Mellor, Emma Wolfe, I'm so sorry that's rattled past so quickly. We will have more from both of them at around the same time, just after 7:30, so stay with us for that. Thank you both.
Now, have you ever been driving along, not a care in the world, and then suddenly you hit a pothole?
Yes. Broke the, I don't know the technical car term, the axle? Anyway.
Sounds bad, anyway.
Something bad. It was expensive. Anyway, you wouldn't be alone if that's the case. In the last 5 years, councils have been forced to fork out a total of £32 million in compensation for injuries related to potholes.
Well, one person who knows more about this subject than almost anyone is Mark Morell, or as some know him, Mr. Pothole. He campaigns to fix Britain's roads. Well, good morning to you, Mark. So potholes aren't just about a hole in the road, are they? As we just heard from Isabel, they can be very damaging and very expensive.
Yeah, massive cost to society. It's reported that one cyclist a week is either killed or seriously injured as a result of potholes. And also that drivers have incurred £1.7 billion worth of costs through damage, like Isabel mentioned, tyres, wheels, suspension. And then there's the ongoing cost to the NHS with personal injuries that isn't catered for. So a massive cost. And we're set in the situation where we could potentially face cuts to the pothole fund from central government because of spending crisis. At the same time, have a massive increase in the materials costs, but government secretly cut £400 million from the general road maintenance budget last year, this year, and next year. So God only knows where we're going to be in another 2 or 3 years' time. I mean, I did say before about some stunts I've pulled with a tank. I think I might have to look at it seriously and invest in one.
Could you repeat that stat about injuries again? I just wanted to ask you, just repeat it for me.
It's reported that there's one cyclist killed or seriously injured a week on our roads as a result of potholes.
So it's the cyclists that bear the brunt of the injuries. I was wondering if any of the injuries were also for drivers, whiplash or something like that, as they hit a pothole. I just wanted to understand the extent of the injury. So that's terrible, isn't it? Then these cyclists suffering the consequences because they're so vulnerable on two wheels.
Yes, they are. And the worst case I come across was a few years ago, where a cyclist actually was in the army, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, survived that. Come home on his bike, hit a pothole instead of going to the verge, fell into the road and got killed by a car. And that pothole had been reported by the police 6 months earlier to the council and nothing had happened.
And Mark, I mean, the reality is, obviously, the cost of living crisis, councils are going to be striving to make efficiency savings, and it means that our roads are going to get worse, aren't they?
Yeah, and I'm fed up with this term efficiencies. Efficiency is doing more work with the same resource, or the same amount of work with less resource. Reality is councils are heavily reliant on central government funding because the pressure's on their budgets, and I'm not there just to stick up for councils because I'm the biggest critic as well, but with the social care costs and the children's services costs, they rely on central government funding to really spend on our roads. Now, with £400 million cut already and potentially another £500 million cut, many councils will not be able to meet their statutory requirements. And whilst we see a third of our roads, local roads, desperately in need of repair, I can see roads being have to actually closed because they will get to a state where they have no option.
Well, listen, Mr. Pothole, thank you so much for your time this morning. I can almost hear our audience screaming about potholes up and down the country. Thank you so much for your time. If you are affected by potholes where you live, send us in some pictures. Name and shame your local council. Have you been the victim of a pothole, no less, and had expensive repairs to do? We'd love to hear from you on that this morning.
It's just the worst sound, isn't it, when you hit a pothole and you just go, ooh.
I know.
It shudders through your whole body.
Or if you've got a sleeping baby in the back and you hit a pothole, there's nothing more annoying. Woken my baby up.
Yeah, we know it's going to get lots of you talking today. So GB Views at gbnews.uk. We'll share some of them throughout the programme. But after the break, we're going to have more on the resignation of Gavin Williamson. And we'll also bring you the latest from the US midterms. This is After the Weather.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. Further showers today, especially in the west. Once again, just like yesterday, but there'll be a better chance of some sunny spells and some longer-lasting drier interludes compared with the last couple of days. The weather is certainly changeable at the moment. That's because we've got all these westerlies coming in from the Atlantic, low pressure in charge, and various weather fronts at play. But actually, these old fronts are not causing too many problems, I think. They're mostly showery features. And as we start off the day, northern England, parts of Wales in particular, will be subject to quite a number of showers, some more prolonged rain in places. By the time we get to the afternoon, though, there'll be a better chance of gaps between the showers, some sunny spells, and some places might not see that many showers, certainly compared with the last couple of days. 15 Celsius in the south, 12 Celsius for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales. Less of a gusty wind compared with the last couple of days, so that might help make it feel a bit more pleasant where we managed to dodge the showers. All change, though, later in the day because the showers ease away, but thicker clouds arrive from the north and the west, and as a result, we're going to see some light outbreaks of rain over western hills, some more persistent rain for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. But with the breeze picking up from the southwest, well, that's a mild direction, and as a result, temperatures are rising. It's a mild start to Thursday, and for southeastern areas in particular, it's a mostly dry day. There'll be some breaks with that cloud, some sunshine coming through. However, the cloud will always be thickest towards the west and the northwest. We'll see some light outbreaks of rain over the hills and some more persistent wet weather for the northwest of Scotland. It's a breezy day, but actually with that breeze coming from the southwest, it is going to be milder once again, 16 Celsius in the south or even 17 Celsius. And that trend continues through Friday and the weekend. Unsettled in the northwest, drier in the southeast, but very mild for all of us.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, mate.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Government Minister Gavin Williamson has resigned amid continued bullying allegations.
Williamson, who served as Minister without portfolio, has resigned from government. That is our top story this morning. You're watching Breakfast. It's 7 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 9th of November. Our top story this morning.
So Gavin Williamson has resigned as a government minister following a series of allegations that he bullied civil servants and MPs. In his resignation letter, he refused the accusations and vowed to clear his name.
The first results from the US midterms are rolling in, with the key seat of Pennsylvania being taken by the Democrats. The Republicans are set to win the lower house of Congress, but the race for control of the Senate is hanging in the balance. We'll have all the latest.
And the first picture of Matt Hancock in his jungle uniform has been released as he prepares to join I'm Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. The former Health Secretary has said the jungle is a metaphor for the world he works in.
Which is ironic, because he says he's scared of snakes, but you'd have thought he'd have encountered a few of those in Westminster. Let us know your thoughts this morning. Get in touch the usual ways, on Twitter or on email.
Now to our top story, and Government Minister Gavin Williamson has resigned amid continued bullying allegations.
Williamson, who served as Minister without portfolio, said in his resignation letter that he refuted the allegations about his conduct and he vowed to clear his name.
Well, in response, Labour criticised Rishi Sunak's decision to stick with Williamson, calling it a damning reflection of a weak Prime Minister.
Well, let's speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, about all of this. Look, it appeared to be untenable yesterday for the Minister without portfolio. Lots of questions, perhaps unfairly, do you think, about Sunak's judgment? I mean, did he really have any alternative but to include such a powerful person in terms of garnering numbers for him in the leadership contest?
Fascinating, isn't it, that when Downing Street start to suggest they've got full confidence in a minister, that normally means the job is all but over, and that was certainly the case yesterday. I think in many ways, Isabel, you're right, his position was becoming untenable given the charge sheet against him, which seemed to be growing almost by the hour yesterday, with many of these people not just suggesting off the record that Gavin Williamson they would allege was a bully, but rather going on the record and being willing to tell these stories. And it was that almost trickle effect in the end that did it for the former Cabinet Office Minister. Now, was it unfair? Critics of Rishi Sunak would suggest, Isabel, that he should have made this call when he made the appointment, literally 2 weeks ago, in that the essence he knew there were allegations against Gavin Williamson. Maybe not the details of them, but he knew that there were complaints, and that is why Labour and others this morning saying that this reflects badly, very badly, on the Prime Minister. Clearly, it's not great politically to have to effectively get rid of one of your ministers. Now, we don't know whether he really resigned or was effectively fired, but it's not a good look 2 weeks into your premiership. We've got very used to cabinet resignations, haven't we, in the last 6 months or so. But frankly, Rishi Sunak will not wanted this to happen. As you say, not given, at least of all, the role that Gavin Williamson played during his leadership campaign and essentially as an enforcer inside the government, trying to corral MPs to get them to do certain things. And there will be suggestions that this is all politically motivated. We know it's effectively began with the former Chief Whip who served under Liz Truss. It's an attempt this by Liz Truss's supporters to undermine the new Prime Minister. Again, I think it is also a reminder of the deep divisions within the Conservative Party, and little sign that even with the coronation of a new leader that those divisions have gone away. In his resignation letter, Gavin Williamson said this had all become a distraction. I think that also become clear. They wanted this to happen before Prime Minister's question time today. Keir Starmer would have had a field day, I think, effectively with it. But you know what, as I say, this does weaken the Prime Minister to a degree, and it is again a reflection, aside from the allegations themselves, I think, of the political divide still within the Conservative Party that continues to fester away.
McCaffrey, our political editor outside Downing Street for us. Thank you very much. And we're joined in the studio now by Kat Neelan, who's the political editor of Tortoise. And Kat, you actually broke this story. You got the ball rolling on this whole thing. But eyebrows were raised when Gavin Williamson was first appointed, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Because as Darren was just saying there, you know, he is known as a player of the dark arts. So, you know, he kind of boasts about this. So a lot of this is not surprising. We've heard MPs go on the record about their own personal experiences with him over many years. And of course, he has been sacked or resigned now from under 3 prime ministers. So Theresa May when he was Defence Secretary, Boris Johnson, and now Rishi Sunak as well. So, you know, there is a sort of litany of issues here.
But do you think it's fair to question Sunak's judgment on all of this? It feels like we're very short-sighted in terms of remembering how desperate the 3 candidates, Boris, Sunak and Mordaunt, were in terms of getting the numbers to go over the line in this latest leadership contest. And Gavin Williamson, incredibly powerful when it came to all that, as was Suella Braverman. He had to include them, didn't he?
Well, so I think it's 2 different sort of issues that are at play here. So this was more of a reward for work done. Gavin Williamson obviously helped his leadership campaign, although that was unsuccessful in the summer. Suella Braverman is probably a sort of harder nut to crack because she brings with her support from part of the party. Gavin Williamson less so. He doesn't bring a wing. So you can arguably sort of get rid of him with less damage done to the integrity of the leadership and perhaps fewer sort of MPs on the outside then backbiting. But I do think there are questions to be asked about Rishi Sunak's judgment on this. You know, he kind of goes into number 10 saying that he pledged to be sort of an accountable Prime Minister, one of integrity. You know, you can't go in the same way that sort of, you know, some of the criticism around Boris Johnson sort of and his relationship with Chris Pincher, saying we didn't know about this because everyone knew about it.
OK. Do you think it's almost been an open goal for Labour, for Rishi Sunak to stand on the step of Downing Street? We always say steps, don't we? But there's actually only the one step. But he stood outside that step and he spoke about integrity, professionalism and accountability. And it has been that integrity, that buzzword, that Labour are now just so quick to pick up on when we talk about Braverman, when we talk about Gavin Williamson. Do you think Rishi Sunak was right to be so public with that kind of ethos that he wanted to bring?
Well, I think he had to, really. I mean, think about how chaotic the first half of this year has been. And, you know, the reason that Boris Johnson left, was forced out, was in no small part down to sort of personal poor judgment. You know, some people would say character flaws. So, you know, I think Rishi Sunak had to in order to differentiate himself from that, and also the professionalism after the sort of chaotic period under Liz Truss. You know, he wants to try and turn the page, new chapter. That's what he's trying to do. The problem is that the pool of people that he's selecting his cabinet from have been around now for many years, and there is a lot of people that are tainted, and there's also an awful lot of bad blood between the MPs within the party. You know, forget about the opposition. It's the blue on blue attacks that are really kind of hurting.
Yeah, the blue on blue attacks, but also an unenviable task in terms of trying to balance the books. Lots in the papers this morning about how exactly they're going to do that, and bound to rip open, I suppose, some of those divisions within this Conservative Party when they're talking about going as far as a 50p tax rate on top earners, which will offend a lot of people. I was reading in the Mail this morning, their op-ed was saying this beggars belief. Hunt would be mad to go after the wealth creators and savers in this country.
Yes, I mean, there is a definite risk that having sort of tried to reverse some of the mistakes or some of the issues that were caused by the mini-budget under Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, that they go so far the other way that they just wind up even everyone else. But I think probably the sort of political calculation that's going on at the moment is, at best, there are 2 years now until the next general election. They will try to maximise the pain now so that they can start to reduce that and go into an election lowering taxes and hopefully in a better economic environment. The problem is whether his MPs will allow him to do that, and B, whether the memories will be sufficient that people have all forgotten how awful it was by the time we get around there.
And is this all in line with this fair and compassionate budget that Rishi Sunak has promised that he wants to go after?
I mean, I think fair and compassionate maybe in terms of there's going to be equal amounts of pain across the board. I don't think it's going to be a particularly pleasant time for anyone, and I think there are going to be, you know, it's going to be a combination, of course, of spending cuts and tax rises. So, you know, this could be a real problem for parts of the country that we're already be seeing services that have been absolutely hollowed out, that desperately need it. I mean, we're going into another terrible winter where we're talking about the sort of twindemic, you know, COVID and flu, the NHS on its knees, nurses striking. You know, there are people, obviously, that just can't afford, and services that can't afford to have another round of austerity. But it looks like that's what we're going to have.
OK, Kat Neelan, political editor at Tortoise. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the polls have closed in the United States, with the first races in the midterm elections already being called.
Democrats have so far held up better than expected, with a big victory for John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, fueling hopes that the party could hold the Senate.
Well, let's ask the host of Politics, 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 a podcast over in the States, about what he makes of it all. Good morning to you, Justin Robert Young. Look, perhaps not the red tsunami that the Republicans were hoping for. Will this have implications then, do you think, for the chances of Trump announcing on Tuesday?
Well, I would certainly believe so. Not only was this not a red tsunami, but as it's being said on Twitter, it turned into a bit of a red wedding from Game of Thrones. This is not exactly the margins that the Republicans were hoping for. There were times earlier this evening where the projections were 30 seats in the House. Now it looks like it might be in single digits, and that's going to put new Senate Majority Leader, if he makes it there, Kevin McCarthy, in a lot of difficult positions. But as far as Trump goes, there are a lot of Senate candidates that were neophytes, that had not had any kind of political experience before. They were buoyed by Trump, and they came out and lost. And that is going to not only ding Trump, but also one of the candidates that did very well was Ron DeSantis in Florida, along with Marco Rubio, who's running for the Senate, a far more traditional candidate and somebody that's looked at as a rival for Trump. So, yes, I do think that looking forward to 24, this complicates whether or not rank and file Republicans believe that the magic is still there with old Donald John Trump.
And how do you think Donald Trump is feeling at Ron DeSantis kind of coming up through the ranks incredibly quickly, really? It was nobody, really, 4 years ago, and an incredible defeat last night in Florida. But that does mean he could be going kind of head-to-head with his Florida resident, Donald Trump, looking at White House in 2024.
That's exactly right. 4 years ago, Ron DeSantis barely won the governorship of Florida on the back of things like a commercial where he was reading to his small child how to build a wall because he wanted to show how sufficiently enthralled he was with Trump. And then now, not only does Ron DeSantis do things that in Florida politics is very, very rare, including turning Miami-Dade County, which is the stronghold of liberal support, red in this election, but also Trump is feeling the heat from behind. He called Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious at a rally a few days ago. So there is no doubt there will be a showdown. The question today that did not exist yesterday is now the conventional wisdom seems to be that Ron DeSantis might be the safer pick, and that was not on the lips of many Republicans 24 hours ago.
Interesting. A day is a long time in politics. Look, an hour ago we spoke to Dr. Frank Luntz, who said a big story he thinks is going to be turnout for the Republicans. He blames low turnout squarely on the rhetoric of fraudulent elections 2 years ago that have been pushed by not only Trump but many of the candidates that he has endorsed. Do you think that that is a fair, link that he's made there, that people just don't trust the system anymore? They haven't turned out, hence the results?
Well, when you looked at the polling going into this, the number one issue that everybody had was inflation. And while that certainly is a pain point, I don't know if it turned out to be as politically efficacious as the Republicans were assuming it would, i.e. the blame was not really on Biden's shoulders, at least in some of these major contests. What it turned out is that this was kind of a back to basics election. Republicans tend to come out when there are stable candidates that have some kind of track record. If it's not Trump doing his magic in 2016, the charm is not quite there when it's a Dr. Oz or maybe a Herschel Walker in Georgia, a Blake Masters in Arizona who is currently running behind. On the other hand, the Democrats found one of their bread and butter issues that's been a winner for them for decades here in America, and that is abortion. You had the Supreme Court overturn the Roe versus Wade decision, and now you have a lot of Democrats that want to vote for other Democrats in federal office because the message was that the Republicans would ban abortion nationwide, as it is now in some of the states here. So in a lot of ways, this was a back to basics kind of situation, and I would be curious to see if some of the leadership in the Republican Party, i.e. Mitch McConnell in the Senate, doesn't try to look at this as an instructive lesson. People that have done it before, stick to the basics, and they're probably going to have some kind of unifying message on abortion going forward.
And Justin, all eyes right now will be on the state of Georgia, which is very close to call right now. Raphael Warnock right now is on 49%, Herschel Walker 48.5%. Looks like it could be a runoff there.
Indeed. And so for many of your viewers who are not intimately knowledgeable about some of the arcane American laws, state by state, all of these things are determined within their own borders. In Georgia, if no candidate gets over 50%, then it goes to a runoff. A reminder that the Senate in 2020 was decided based on a runoff in Georgia where 2 seats were decided. This time, depending on what happens in Nevada and Arizona, the Senate could again be decided on a runoff, and it'll be very curious to see which Republican luminaries come down to campaign for Herschel Walker. Trump, who has, the reason why Herschel Walker is in this race to begin with, you would assume, but also Brian Kemp, who outran Herschel Walker by 8 points in that state tonight. He has kept an arm's length distance from Herschel Walker. You have to wonder whether or not, now that his race is settled, he will want to show up for him going forward. But it's going to be a nail biter because that is an extraordinarily close race.
Really interesting, great analysis. Justin Robert Young, host of the Politics podcast. And may I say, Americans really know how to do podcast TV studios. We don't do it like that in the UK. It looks great, that scene behind you. You've got a moving screen, the whole works.
Yeah,
love
great
it.
Sunrise there.
Yeah, absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you so much. It's great to speak to you.
Thank you.
It's true, isn't it? We don't have those kinds of...
I know. We could take a leaf out there.
It's probably in his living room or something, but he's just made it look so professional.
Beautiful sunrise. Unlike us in here. A little fake one behind us. Yeah. OK, let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today.
The NATO chief, Jens Stoltenberg, will visit 10 Downing Street later for a meeting with Prime Minister Sunak. Ahead of that meeting, Sunak has said peace in the UK cannot be taken for granted while Putin wages war on Ukraine.
A leading charity is warning that the cost of living crisis is driving food banks to breaking point with record-breaking levels of need. The Trussell Trust says almost 1.3 million emergency parcels were handed out in 6 months this year, with almost 500,000 going to children. 1 in 5 people referred to its network are from working households.
A new survey shows young people are nearly twice as likely to have fallen victim to scams than older age groups. Research from Goldman Sachs shows 22% of 18 to 34-year-olds said they'd been the victim of financial fraud at least once, compared to 12% of people aged 35 to 54. So just before 7, we spoke to Mr. Pothole, and I asked everybody at home listening and watching to send in their stories, their pictures. I don't know what started now.
No,
we
knew this would happen. We knew it would get you talking.
Roger, I have so many pictures of potholes in Talbot in South Wales that I intend to publish a book featuring them all when I retire. Gosh, that doesn't sound like a very...
There's an appetite for it.
Yeah, there is.
Pothole, and now we've got Roger writing a book. It's a thing. Stuart says Essex and Harlow have spent millions on the M11 7A junction, but potholes are still crazy. They're expensive to fix.
Yeah, Rob said I had a normal saloon car, which within 3 months had both rear springs broken due to potholes. I now have a Range Rover. Oh, lucky you, Rob.
Right,
but you need a four-wheel drive, essentially. You need the off-road setting on British roads now. John says it seems like there's never any money to repair potholes in the roads. Where is the money being spent?
Yep, and Bob says Gloucestershire has numerous potholes on major routes. Many of the potholes near where I live have been repaired 4 or 5 times, which means multiple costs on old repairs. And that's the thing as well, isn't it? And this is what Mr. Pothole was telling us. The cost of living, everything's gone up in price. And even just fixing a pothole now costs councils so much more money. So we could see our roads even getting worse in the next few months.
Stories of potholes and anything else you want to get involved in this morning, let us know. Look, the High Court is going to decide this week if a hotel in North Ferriby in East Yorkshire can actually be used to house asylum seekers.
East Riding Council applied for an injunction to prevent the Humberview Hotel being used by the Home Office to house single adult males.
Well, our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley joins us now with a local councillor. Good morning to you, Anna.
Good morning. Yes, I'm joined this morning by Julie Abraham. She is the Conservative councillor for the South Hunsley ward, and she's part of East Riding Council, who have put in this injunction to stop the hotel behind us being used to house asylum seekers. Good morning, Julie. Can you just explain why the council have opposed this?
Well, I think the council shares many of the concerns of local residents, actually, that this isn't the best location to be placing asylum seekers. It's a relatively remote location on busy A63. The nearest facilities in either direction are probably a mile away. In North Ferriby we only have a few basic shops, and in the town of Hessel there are more shops, but it's still a distance to get to.
And what have local residents been saying to you?
Well, I think they've been really annoyed at the lack of transparency about this. As a council, we got informed that it was a possibility maybe a few weeks before, but you're not allowed to say anything. And actually, we only got final confirmation 3 days before they were going to start placing asylum seekers in the hotel. And I think that lack of transparency causes real concerns and raises suspicions as to what may be coming. And I always find as a councillor that if you can explain things before things happen, there's a better understanding, and I think there's more tolerance, just less suspicion around it.
And if this hotel is to be used to house asylum seekers, what will it do for the local economy? I mean, people's weddings have already been cancelled, haven't they, that were set to take place here?
It's a lovely facility to have on the edge of the village, and the views across to the Humber Bridge are actually spectacular, and it's well used by local people. And I think together with other hotels in the area that are being used to house asylum seekers, at some point there's going to be an impact on the local economy, because tourists won't be able to stay here. People who've got friends or family visiting, if they haven't got room in their house, where will they stay? And so it's taking money out of the local economy, as well as taking away a very valued facility.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for speaking with us this morning. So that decision is going to be made later this week as to whether that injunction goes ahead or asylum seekers will be in here. Of course, the Home Office are saying that they're doing everything they can, and the solution of using hotels is something to help with the migrant crisis at the moment, but it's 5.3 million that's being spent per day on hotels to currently house migrants.
Huge amount of money, a huge issue. Anna Riley, thanks very much indeed.
Now stay with us, because after the break, Paul Coit will be here going through all of the big sports stories of the day. That's after this.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Coming up to 7:30, still to come on the programme this morning. In around an hour's time, we'll be finding out what this year's must-have toys for Christmas are, and we'll be getting some advice on how to get your hands on them if you're on a budget.
And we're going to be playing with some of them as well.
Yeah,
I've been told.
Okay,
Can't wait.
exciting.
And at 8:45, we're going to speak to the Flyonesses. They're a team of inspiring British women who won gold at the World Parachuting Championships.
And keep your thoughts coming in. So many of you have been getting in touch. We appreciate it. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Let's look at the sport now, and Paul Coit joins us now to discuss the latest and the biggest sports stories. Paul, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, we're good, thanks.
Yeah,
a bit
good.
of girl power in the studio.
I love that,
Yeah.
I think, although I've got a bit of a sad one to start with, and that's Leslie Phillips. You know Leslie Phillips, the legendary actor who passed away yesterday. And I just want to mention he was born in Tottenham, and he was a huge Tottenham Hotspur fan.
Okay.
And he walked out on the pitch. He was about 9 at the time. Introduced him, and he came out to sofa, and I introduced him and said, "You know, one of the great actors, Leslie Phillips," and he leaned forward to the microphone. And he just went, "Hello," and the whole stadium went crazy for him. And he was a lovely man, so I thought I'd just mention.
Yeah,
Word for
very
him.
sad news. All right, well, look, let's stay with the football theme. Sepp Blatter has been talking about this controversial World Cup coming up. What's he had to say now?
Oh,
Big
my
mistake.
goodness. Right, we can go back 12 years then to when FIFA, in their wisdom or their wallets, decided that the World Cup should be held. There was 2 World Cups that were decided then. Of course, the Russian one and now the one in Qatar. Now, I don't need to go into how controversial it is, the fact that the World Cup is there. But Sepp Blatter, who was the FIFA president, so he was overseeing all of this, and has now been seen, how corrupt the whole system was. He looks like he's now going, well, actually, I think it probably shouldn't be held in Qatar. Oh, well done. You know, finally he said that. But he's now pushing a bit more of the blame to Michel Platini. Now, Michel Platini, for those that are not aware of Michel Platini, one of the greatest French footballers of all time, an absolutely legendary footballer, and then went into administration, and then he was the president of UEFA. So you've got Blatter, who's the president of FIFA, and Platini, president of UEFA. And he said it was Platini's vote that swayed everybody else away from the USA, which seemed the popular vote at the time, to Qatar, and now says, and it starts getting very political, the fact that he'd had a meeting with the French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, at the time, and saying, look, we want you to vote for Qatar, because then there was a deal for fighter jets worth around £13 billion that was done after that. I mean, the plot thickens.
Yeah.
All we know, and I think everybody would agree, that it really is a crazy place to have the World Cup, not only when it is, but the fact that it's a very small place and the whole world is congregating on it with no football history. They passed it off of saying, oh, well, it's the Middle East and it's a great place. You know, we like to have football where it's upcoming, but we all know why it's there.
Yeah.
And everybody knows it. And now Sepp Blatter, I think he's just trying to distance himself a little bit. It's impossible.
Is it too late for that?
Yeah. All very, very too late, yeah. And he's 86 now, but it's just all very dodgy, unfortunately. But we've got to make the best of the World Cup that there is, which starts in just under 2 weeks.
And a very exciting announcement tomorrow, we think, about who's going to be in the England squad. Yes,
yeah. And this is the England squad will be announced tomorrow. This is, and Gareth Southgate's going to announce this. Now, we're losing players left, right and centre through injury. There's a lot of fullbacks that all seem to be falling by the wayside. So we're waiting for that, for this announcement. So it's going to be tomorrow. There's the Brazilians, they made their announcement. They've already done that. And there's pictures of Brazilian footballers all celebrating, looking very, very pleased because it's turning into the X Factor now, for crying out loud. I don't know how they will. He'll get them in all separately and have a quiet word and say, yeah, you're in, you're out, and they film it. I don't know. But anyway, it will be announced tomorrow. So we'll see. I think the big one that everybody's interested about, there's always one player the public would love to see, but whether the manager would agree, and that's James Maddison. Now, James Maddison is a fantastic footballer, plays for Leicester, and we're beginning to think, there he is there. It's like a personal thing between him and Gareth Southgate. Now, there was a time when he played for England, and then he was ill. This is James Maddison, and then he was seen that night in a casino.
Oh, dear.
So then Gareth Southgate didn't like that very much. He's been left out of clubs, left out of England squads, but he's playing out of his skin, and everybody would love to see him in. But whether Gareth's going to include him, we don't know. But anyway, the announcement for the final 22 for Qatar is tomorrow.
OK. Look, can we have a quick word about Djokovic? What's he been up to?
Yeah, a quick word about Djokovic. It's what he's been up to, or whether he has or whether he hasn't. It's the secret drink. Now, this has been viewed on social media by millions of people, and I think we've got this as well. It was at the Paris Masters. Now there we are.
Oh, yeah, I can see
now, if you see there now, Ulysses Badio is the man with. Look, they're all looking very shifty. You see the drink being passed. The bit before that is that there's a drink that's being mixed by his coach in a very shifty fashion. There's other people that are standing in the way. He's got his eyes all over the place, as to say, don't let anybody see what I'm doing. The drink is mixed. Then it's passed to the ball girl, who then runs it over to Djokovic, and then he puts it on the side. Ooh. So obviously everybody's thinking, hello, something dodgy in the drink. Why would you be so careful about the way you are mixing it? You're trying to keep everybody away from doing it. See, there we are. You can see them there.
Yeah.
For those on the radio, there's some. Yeah, it just looks a bit shady. So anyway, the wife of Novak Djokovic, Elena, had posted on Twitter. She said, "Not everything you see is controversial. It could be private. Is that allowed? But I don't know why you would want a private drink. I don't know. But anyway." And she said, and people have said, "Well, is he going to talk about it?" And she said, "Well, he will discuss it when he's ready." So obviously he's not ready yet.
OK, Paul, thank you very much.
I do have a little drink to slide. And by the way, I won't say what's in that one.
All I need is caffeine. Caffeine will do.
OK.
Paul, thank you so much.
Double shot in it.
Thanks, Paul. Now, new analysis by the Labour Party claims a fifth of businesses say economic uncertainty is holding back their investment plans.
Well, Shadow Energy and Climate Change Minister Jonathan Reynolds joins us now this morning. A very good morning to you. You're not going to try and claim to be the party of business and investment now, are you?
Well, we certainly are the party of business and investment. I mean, look at what the chairman of Tesco, John Allen, said recently. There's only Labour on the pitch when it comes to growth. But what these findings show us is, look, it's been another disgraceful few days for the Conservative government, resignations again, more scandal, and I know it looks like a soap opera, but the serious point about this is this kind of political uncertainty leads to further economic uncertainty. That means the economy is not fulfilling the potential that it has, and that's my frustration. That's why I want to get rid of this government entirely. Let's get on to new ideas, fresh ideas. Let's get this country moving as it should do, but it's not going to do that. And the fact that so many businesses just cannot plan for the future under this government, I'm afraid, is testimony to their failure.
OK then, Jonathan, how would Labour fix this then? How would you make business better for people? How would you make it easier for people to invest?
Yeah, look, there's three specific things I'd like to tell you about this morning. The first is having a proper industrial strategy, the kind of thing we see in Germany and France, long-term institutions to give people clear policy stability to drive up business investment. Then I think you've got to remove barriers to investment. I think business rates are a huge part of the problem in the UK. We think we can better balance taxation between online trading and physical premises. That's a key part of the plan. And then much greater investment in skills, more flexibility around the apprenticeship levy, which has led, unfortunately, to a massive drop in the number of apprenticeships in the UK. Okay. Skills and labour are massive problems in the UK. Those three specific things, there's more to do, but that'd be a very good start.
Yeah, but with respect, you know, you talk about barriers to investment. What would be a barrier to investment? Would be going after people with non-dom status, wouldn't it? We've seen that happen in France. François Hollande tried it. They all packed up sticks and came over to the UK. If you go after them, you take the wealth creators, you take the investors, the people that spend their money and create business here in the UK.
Well, I would have to politely, very strongly disagree with you there and direct you to the study into non-DOBs and the tax status done by the LSE, the university in London, about what happened when we've seen restrictions in the past on non-DOM status. And they showed that people didn't leave the country. But I disagree. I completely, on a moral basis, object to the fact you can pay for a different tax rate in the UK. I think that is not a helpful thing. But if you look at what the study has shown, it will bring in over £3.2 billion to abolish non-DOM status. We would use that money to expand the NHS workforce. Massive benefits for the UK of tackling the huge backlog we're seeing in the NHS and giving people some real capacity to deal with the problems that we're seeing. So look, I think the evidence doesn't support what you've said. And I think, of course, you always need tax rates which are competitive. But the non-DOM status we have in the UK is not to the benefit of the country overall.
I wanted to ask you about another issue in the papers this week. It's been over the issue of ID cards. There does seem to be a little bit of confusion in the ranks of the Labour Party as to whether you support these or not. Stephen Kinnock said that they should certainly be on the table in a way to control migration, and he points them being used in EU countries. But that was slapped down by Yvette Cooper, who said that they shouldn't be used and they're not being considered as part of your strategy. So what are your thoughts? I was hoping you'd kind of clear up this confusion. Should we be cataloguing everyone in the country? Because there will be concerns from our viewers and listeners that, you know, this could impact on civil liberty.
Well, I think Yvette Cooper has laid out the position there. We don't have current plans for ID cards, but I think the legitimate point that Stephen Kinnock was raising is, I mean, there are already considerable obligations on businesses, on landlords, to make sure people have the legitimate right to be in this country. And I think, unfortunately, we're not seeing that sufficiently enforced, and that is a particular issue in terms of, I mean, there's lots that clearly needs to happen to make sure we have an immigration system that is fit for purpose after 12 years of Conservative failure. But frankly, we're not seeing the kind of checks take place often that needs to happen. So I think it's legitimate to point that out, but it's not part of our current policy plans at the moment.
Gavin Williamson stood down yesterday evening. What are your thoughts on bullying in Westminster more broadly? Is it a problem that needs to be addressed? Of course, Liam Byrne being suspended from the Labour Party in April over bullying allegations.
Well, I think Gavin Williamson is a specific case of someone who should never have been reappointed to government. I mean, his record is 3 appointments under 3 different prime ministers, 3 resignations in disgrace. I mean, clearly everyone in every walk of life should be abiding by the proper employment procedures and making sure they are acting in the way that we would expect of anybody, and in public life the bar should be even higher. But I'm afraid with Gavin Williamson, that's a specific case of somebody who should never have been appointed to government, a terrible reflection on the judgment of the Prime Minister, because he was already under investigation for this when the appointment was made. And to me, why these people appointed to government? Well, it's because that's the Conservative Party, and there's no way any Prime Minister can forge a majority out of what we see in Parliament from the Conservative Party without taking these risks, and that is why they're incapable of providing the stability the country needs.
OK, Jonathan Reynolds, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Thank you so much for your company this morning.
Thanks so much.
Right, stay with us. We're going to go to the papers a little bit late this morning. We had to include Jonathan Reynolds there, but we will be joined again by Emma Wolfe and David Mellor in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Good morning. The time is 7:43 and it's time to go through your papers now. Joining us now is former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. So, Emma, let's start with you, shall we? We're going to go a little bit different. We're not going to be talking about the midterms or Gavin Williamson just yet. We're going to be talking about Meghan Markle's podcast.
Yeah.
Now, have you been listening? Because it really is a unique
It
listen,
really
isn't
is
it?
quite an experience. I have listened to a few episodes and tried to stop myself laughing. This is Meghan Markle. Her Spotify podcast is called Archetypes, and she talks to a series of, inspirational women in it. And in the latest episode, she's been exploring the term B-I-T-C-H. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that on
TV at this time in the morning. But anyway, she's saying basically that difficult women, when you call a woman difficult, it basically means that you're awesome. And that, labelling a woman as difficult is a way of sort of downplaying her really awesome qualities. Awesome is this word that is used a lot in this podcast.
I'd feel very differently if I was called a bitch than how I'd feel to be called a difficult woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I almost take it as a compliment to be it depends in the context.
Well, I think all of it is pretty sexist anyway.
Yeah.
Why should you be, it's a bit like Theresa May being called a bloody difficult woman. But Meghan is saying that basically difficult is code word for the B word. She doesn't use the word bitch, she says the B word.
Right.
And that often, these qualities such as persistence and resilience and all of these things, which I think are awesome qualities in women, strong opinions, standing up for yourself, all of those things are kind of bungled into this label of difficult or bitch, basically. She makes a good point about female ambition, about how if you're persistent and ambitious, you're seen as pushy, bossy, all of those words that we know are used, especially in politics, are used about women who are very hardworking, who are very ambitious.
So you agree with her on this podcast, then, on the theme that difficult women is actually, it can be a good thing?
I mean, I wouldn't say I agree with Meghan Markle on much, but I think she has a point.
Is that the key then? So what she's saying might be right, but the fact that it comes from her,
exactly.
a lot of women might think...
That immediately discredits it. But what I find extraordinary, you see, is that some men are whatever we want to call them, and some men are difficult because there are things in life to be difficult about. Some women are difficult because there are things that people should be difficult about. Other people are difficult because they can't help themselves. They're congenitally difficult. This idea that somehow you can just say, have stereotypes like that suggests that this woman is trying too hard. And I know I shouldn't say this, and I'd say this if she was a man with even more vigour. Her reach is exceeding her grasp on a lot of these things. I just don't think she's up to the analyses that she's trying to put across in the interest of getting money out of gullible American producers.
Yeah, and I think the sense with Meghan is very much that she feels so kind of hard done by. She feels that she's battling against the world, battling the royal family, all of that, whereas a lot of the outside world looks at her and sees a beautiful, privileged, very, very wealthy, very, very comfortable woman who is, kind of asking for a lot of sympathy and a lot of pity.
And what she's never appreciated is this. Look, I spent 11 years as a minister, and a lot of the time you trog around with members of the royal family, very nice people for the most part, doing a job that would bore you rigid. Doing a job that would bore you rigid, going on visits, smiling, being there. And she never wanted to buy into that. She wanted immediately to become Princess Diana. And, it was never going to work out for her because the royal family is about service to others. Meghan is interested in service to, herself.
Well, staying with the royal theme, David, you've chosen this story in The Telegraph about Prince Andrew's accuser in relation to her lawsuit against Alan Dershowitz. What's the latest plot twist in this?
Well, the latest you find in a number of papers here in The Telegraph. Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, yesterday dropped a lawsuit against a high-profile lawyer and one-time Donald Trump attorney, saying she may have made a mistake in accusing him of sexually abusing her. Now, Alan Dershowitz, I know, I've had dinner with him on several occasions. He's a brilliant man. I mean, he's a brilliant lawyer. I never for a moment believed that, he was kind of into...
Well, it's not beyond the realms of possibility because someone's brilliant that they haven't been a sexual deviant.
I know, but it never struck me as credible. And the interesting thing is Dershowitz fought it right from the start, and in the end she's had to admit that she was probably wrong. Now, that is not an important story over here, except what does it do? It gives Andrew and those who are supporting Andrew the opportunity to say, well, maybe she was wrong about me as well, except Alan Dershowitz always made clear he wasn't going to pay her a penny. In fact, he said that they were going to have to go to court and he wasn't going to accept an apology and whatever. Well, he's 84. I don't blame him for accepting that kind of settlement. But if Andrew thinks that throws him a lifeline, I say it doesn't.
Right. Even if her credibility is cast into doubt, you still think he's damaged goods.
Why did he pay her $12 million?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Dershowitz refused to pay her any money, and right from the start, said, you know, it wasn't him. Andrew, at the end of the day, mixed with her and mixed with, you know, her Svengali and with the awful Ms. Maxwell. And he is now finished, the Duke of York, finished. Apparently he was in tears when the news was broken to him, but I'm amazed that he could have been under any doubt. But, I mean, I take the view, and no doubt people will want to comment on this, there is no way back for him. And the fact that she has made a mistake, so she now says, over Alan Dershowitz does not throw him a lifeline. At least, I hope not.
Well, the money's been paid now, as you say, David. Emma, should we have a look at COP and the comments by President Zelensky of Ukraine saying that climate change cannot be tackled collectively whilst war is raging?
Yeah.
Interesting comments from him.
Yeah, really interesting. So this is a video address yesterday to world leaders at COP in Sharm el-Sheikh. The president of Ukraine is saying there can be no effective climate policy without peace. And he makes the point that the Russian war has brought about this energy crisis. And what it's doing is it's forcing many, many countries to resume coal-fired power generation in order to lower energy prices. It sort of highlights the issue of Russian dominance over energy, also the fact that they have this stranglehold in supplying gas to many European countries who are represented at COP. Interestingly, Putin is not at the summit. There's, I think, around 100 world leaders there. But President Putin is, unsurprisingly, perhaps not at COP27. But yeah, obviously it brings together these two, you know, really the two overwhelming crises of our times, which are, you know, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the energy crisis as well, and climate change.
Can we talk about the NHS, David? Because, of course, we're talking about all of the stealth taxes and top rate of tax here, there and everywhere, and all the difficult and unpalatable decisions that have to be made. We've got a former health secretary now as Chancellor. You'd think he could be looking at these bureaucrats...
I thought you'd say a former health secretary in the jungle.
Oh, well, that too. But
they get everywhere.
They do, yeah. But the Telegraph talking about all these very well-paid bureaucrats in the NHS.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite frightening, really, that apparently there are over 500 who are, including 430 in the health service itself, on salaries of at least 100,000. And of those, 100 are on at least 150,000, with salaries reaching up to 260,000. And it's interesting that it's the health secretary himself who's asked for these to be published. You see, we assume when money is spent on the health service, it all goes to front-end services. It doesn't. It goes to sustain what ought to be an unsustainable bureaucracy. And every time they're given a lot of money, everyone says, well, that's it for a bit. But it isn't. And now they're looking, apparently, for another £7 billion. You know, we're talking serious money here. And I think that... what Steve Barclay has, the health secretary, has decided to do is to come out fighting and to just put out the facts, because the danger for us is that the NHS becomes a form of religion. Now, the thing about religion...
I mean, I think it already is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we won't go into contentious religious issues, but I think we can say, with a lot of the things that have gone on with religious organisations and what's happened to children and so on, that if you become a religion, you are not then subject to scrutiny in the way that you should be. And I think that the NHS has got away for too long without being properly scrutinised. But as more and more and more money is consumed by the NHS without any particular evidence that it's getting more efficient and more effective, but it's certainly getting better paid.
Oh, well, let us know your thoughts at home on that. You know, we'd be lost without it, or would we? Whether or not big questions need to be asked about the future of the NHS.
Yeah, and we've got nurses striking, haven't we? And then people on £100,000 a year. It's remarkable, really, isn't it? But Emma, David, thank you so much.
Thank you. Right, stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll have more on these all-important midterm results from the United States. But first of all, here's your Wednesday forecast.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. Further showers today, especially in the west. Once again, just like yesterday, but there'll be a better chance of some sunny spells and some longer-lasting drier interludes compared with the last couple of days. The weather is certainly changeable at the moment. That's because we've got all these westerlies coming in from the Atlantic, low pressure in charge, and various weather fronts at play. But actually, these old fronts are not causing too many problems, I think. They're mostly showery features. And as we start off the day, northern England, parts of Wales in particular, will be subject to quite a number of showers, some more prolonged rain in places. By the time we get to the afternoon, though, there'll be a better chance of gaps between the showers, some sunny spells, and some places might not see that many showers, certainly compared with the last couple of days. 15 Celsius in the south, 12 Celsius for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales, with less of a gusty wind compared with the last couple of days, so that might help make it feel a bit more pleasant where we managed to dodge the showers. All change, though, later in the day because the showers ease away, but thicker clouds arrive from the north and the west, and as a result, we're going to see some light outbreaks of rain over western hills, some more persistent rain for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. But with the breeze picking up from the southwest, well, that's a mild direction, and as a result, temperatures are rising. It's a mild start to Thursday. And for southeastern areas in particular, it's a mostly dry day. There'll be some breaks with that cloud, some sunshine coming through. However, the cloud will always be thickest towards the west and the northwest. We'll see some light outbreaks of rain over the hills and some more persistent wet weather for the northwest of Scotland. It's a breezy day, but actually, with that breeze coming from the southwest, it is going to be milder once again, 16 Celsius in the south or even 17 Celsius. And that trend continues through Friday and the weekend. Unsettled in the northwest, drier in the southeast, but very mild for all of us.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
So Gavin Williamson has resigned from government amid continued bullying allegations.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Wednesday the 9th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel and Ellie. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
So Gavin Williamson's resigned as a government minister following a series of allegations that he bullied civil servants and MPs. In his resignation letter, he refuted the accusations and vowed to clear his name.
The first results from the US midterms are rolling in, with the key seat of Pennsylvania being taken by the Democrats. The Republicans are set to win the lower house of Congress, but the race for control of the Senate still hangs in the balance. We'll have the latest.
Brace yourself, the first picture of Matt Hancock in his jungle uniform has been released as he prepares to join I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out. In fact, he went in last night. The Health Secretary has said the jungle is a metaphor for the world that he's been working in.
Yep, I'm sure lots of you have opinions on that one. And we'll be speaking also to the sister of Alaa Abdel Fattah, the British-Egyptian pro-democracy activist who is currently imprisoned in Egypt. He's been behind bars for nearly a decade. Well, his sister will be live in the studio with us shortly.
And as always, we want to hear from you. We are the People's Channel. Let us know your thoughts on Twitter or on email. A very good morning to our top story. The government minister, Gavin Williamson, has resigned amid continued bullying allegations.
Williamson, who served as Minister without portfolio, said in his resignation letter that he refuted the allegations about his conduct and vowed to clear his name.
Well, in response, Labour criticised Rishi Sunak's decision to stick with Williamson, calling it a damning reflection of a weak Prime Minister.
Well, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is at Downing Street for us now. Good morning to you, Darren. Well, was this inevitable for Gavin Williamson with what we've seen happen in the past few days?
Yeah, it was somewhat inevitable. I mean, first of all, when you hear from the Downing Street spokesperson saying that they've got full confidence in a minister of government, you know, almost certainly that's the beginning of the end in this political game. I say, though, almost inevitable, because we had almost allegations, not just on a daily basis, but it felt like an hourly basis yesterday against Gavin Williamson. There was a real snowball of these allegations around bullying, as a backbench MP, or indeed while he was Chief Whip. And it got to the point where it just didn't seem like it was sustainable, and I think the decision needed to be made before Prime Minister's Question Time today. Keir Starmer would have had a field day with those questions and the judgment of Rishi Sunak and all of this. Now, it must be stated, Gavin Williamson denies these allegations. He does not say he is a bully. We know they're being investigated both inside the Conservative Party and now inside Parliament too, and we should allow that to take due course. But in saying that, he felt that he was being a distraction to the government, and that's why in the end he did go, though it's difficult to work out whether essentially he was fired or whether he decided to go of his own volition. And this is the third time he's been booted out from government, if you like. He was under Theresa May as Defence Secretary, under Boris Johnson as Education Secretary, and now as the Cabinet Office Minister under Rishi Sunak. Many would suggest he may not be able to come back from this. His political career could well be dead. But it is on that issue of judgment that Labour will go on today. Questions about whether Rishi Sunak ever should have made this appointment in the first place, given the fact that he did know a complaint had been made against Gavin Williamson, maybe not the details, but that a complaint had been made. And I suspect that's where the opposition, the critics of this government, will go. But there are also questions about who's been leaking this information. Are there splits in the Conservative Party? Are there MPs within the Conservative Party who are already trying to undermine Rishi Sunak less than 2 weeks into the job?
OK, Darren, thank you very much indeed. We're joined in the studio by Kat Neelan, political editor of Tortoise. I wonder if you might be able to give us any insight into who's leaking this information, because this was your big scoop. You broke this story.
Yes, well, I'll say Tory MPs.
OK, keeping your sources secret. Fair enough, fair enough. Look, is this a lapse of judgment, do you think, on behalf of our new PM?
I think it certainly speaks to questions about his judgment, and this is obviously what Labour are saying, but it is also what some Conservative MPs are saying, and did say about him even before he became Prime Minister. He hasn't been MP for that long. He's been a minister for even less time, and people kind of wonder whether he's got the sort of understanding of really how Westminster works when sort of making these appointments. But I think there are sort of different issues at play with the different appointments that he's made here. With Gavin Williamson, he helped him run his leadership campaign during the summer, and that was clearly a reward for work done. With Suella Braverman, you know, it was seen that he was doing that in order to sort of win over part of the party, the sort of, you know, kind of sort of ERG and Common Sense group, the sort of right wing of the party. Whether that was actually as successful as he thought it might be is sort of, you know, question still out.
Kat, I wanted to ask you about the timing and the language of this resignation letter, because it's the classic line, isn't it, that this has become a distraction for the good work that the government is doing.
Yes.
But he doesn't actually admit to any wrongdoing, and says that he's going to step away to focus on the investigation and to clear his name of any wrongdoing. Then Rishi Sunak, accepting his resignation, says it was with great sadness. It's quite strong language, isn't it?
Yes,
from both of them.
And I do think Labour will make this point that Gavin Williamson jumped before he was pushed, and suggesting that there is perhaps some weakness there, that Rishi Sunak didn't speak to him during the course of this. You know, obviously he was in COP for part of it, but not for the whole row, and that they didn't meet before yesterday early evening, I think, and that apparently Gavin Williamson had actually tried to resign not just once but twice. And so, you know, there is this suggestion, is Rishi Sunak really in power? To what extent is he in power? Because, of course, we know Liz Truss, part of the reason that she was brought down was that she really only commanded the respect, the confidence of sort of a third of the party, if that. Rishi Sunak has been trying to build bridges with the rest of the party, but serious questions over whether that's actually being successful.
OK, Kat Neelan, political editor at Tortoise, thank you very much indeed.
Now,
go on.
Sorry, Izzy. Now, polls have closed in the US, with many races already being called.
Democrats have so far held up better than expected, with a big victory for John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, fueling hopes that the party could actually hold the Senate.
Well, Republicans will now have to win 2 of the 3 races in Nevada, Arizona and Georgia to take control.
Well, earlier on, we spoke to Nigel Farage, who was in the States for the election. Let's have a listen to what he said to us.
A very, very big moment. And Arizona, absolutely a key state, a real bellwether state, a state that, of course, has been held for most of the last few years by the Republicans, but went Democrat in 2020 to the shock of many. The truth of it is, I think we've seen from the Republicans and conservative movement in America unrealistic expectations. They expected a red tsunami, that somehow, you know, there were going to be lots and lots of wins, Senate seat wins for the Republicans. The truth is, it's not happening. It's not happening. Yes, the Republicans are picking up seats. Yes, there'll be a Republican win tonight, but it's not going to be the red tsunami. And actually, it'll be like most midterms. Most midterms go against the incumbent president. The way it looks right now, it's not going to be anything particularly exceptional. Will it limit Biden's ability to govern and pass through law? Yes, it will. Does it give Donald Trump the huge springboard he would have hoped for? I'm not sure it does. And there's one result that really stands out tonight, and it's Florida. Ron DeSantis won that in 2018 with just under 50% of the vote. This time, he was nearer 60% of the vote. So the debate that is going to go on within the Republican Party as to whether they should pick Trump or DeSantis, that's going to reach fever pitch, in my opinion, over the next few weeks. And I say that as a friend of Donald Trump.
Very interesting there from Nigel Farage. Let's get the take now of American TV personality and former advisor to the president, Omarosa Manigault-Newman. Really good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Just in case some of our viewers and listeners don't know the context in your sort of relationship with Trump, you were on The Apprentice with him and formed a great alliance there. When he came into power, you were hired as an advisor, but you spectacularly fell out. I don't know what your relationship is like now and whether or not you have some sort of schadenfreude and feel a little bit happy to see the Democrats are doing better, as it turns out this morning.
Good morning, Isabel. Good morning, Ellie. You're certainly right. 20 years ago, I was on a show called The Apprentice, but that was a very long time ago. I've been in politics for about 25 years, serving 2 U.S. presidents and working on Capitol Hill. But let's talk about this election and the significance of the election, particularly for Donald Trump. Donald Trump thought that there was going to be this incredible red wave, that there was going to be a statement made in the country that he still had a grip on the GOP. But what we saw tonight is that Donald Trump doesn't have the same political influence that he once had over his own party or in elections as a whole.
We were just speaking to Justin Robert Young from the podcast Politics, and he said it wasn't a red wave, it was more like a red wedding from Game of Thrones. He said this was really quite shocking to Republicans. Do you think Trump will be deterred by what he's seen last night and this morning? It doesn't look like that red wave that he had perhaps hoped ahead of what we're expecting to hear from him next week in terms of running for the White House in 2024.
You know, I talked to an advisor that's in Trump's camp who stated very clearly that Donald Trump was disappointed with the results of very key races that he thought that they had in the bag. And so I think that his camp is going to have to go back, regroup, and come up with a new strategy as to how they're going to move forward. Otherwise, he could be very vulnerable in his quest to return back to the Oval Office.
Do you personally welcome the idea of him standing? I mean, there were lots of hints being dropped yesterday that he was going to announce next Tuesday at Mar-a-Lago. Or do you think the Republican Party would do well to rid themselves of him, given all the controversy in terms of the Capitol Hill riots and everything that comes with the Trump brigade?
I think that there are bigger issues for Donald. I mean, he's probably going to be indicted. He could certainly face some jail time. I mean, does the GOP want that type of baggage with their candidate that will weaken them and make them vulnerable to loss and defeat? So I do think that they should shift and look at new, fresher candidates as they move forward. But Donald doesn't go down without a fight. He is going to announce his candidacy. He's going to run again for president.
Should they be looking at Ron DeSantis? I mean, he's had a really good run in Florida, came out of nowhere 4 years ago. Very good night for him, but in the same state as Mr. Donald Trump. So could Mr. Trump be feeling quite threatened right now?
Well, just as a little context, I was working for Donald when he endorsed Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis was in trouble in his race, and then Donald stepped up to endorse him, which actually saved his candidacy, and that's how Ron DeSantis became governor. It is interesting that the two of them will probably go head to head. And certainly Ron DeSantis is much more popular in Florida than people expected, 60% plus in his victory this evening. I know that this is going to be a showdown between the two of them. And there's a saying, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers.
Just finally, for people in the UK who wonder, you know, why is any of this relevant really to us? Look, we saw a deterioration in the historic special relationship under Truss when Biden was coming out criticising overtly her policies. And it was an uncomfortable moment, I think, for people questioning whether or not that relationship was damaged. What do you think is the best outcome from these midterms or indeed from the presidential election in 2 years' time in terms of British interests?
Well, I think that all across the world, we're seeing this impact of these economic policies. And in our own country, we have a recession that's happening. And people are hurting. They're making decisions between whether to fill prescriptions or to fill their gas tanks. And so for our country, but also the global community, I really do believe that Mr. Biden is much more tempered than Donald Trump. You remember what it was like for a Trump presidency and how his randomness, his inconsistency, his volatility really made the world as a whole unstable. So it is my opinion that Mr. Biden would be a better choice in his impact of what's going on in the US, but also in the global community.
I just want to ask you, whilst we've got you, your thoughts on Meghan Markle, who's just in her latest podcast been talking about the label difficult women being a put down to women. And I noticed that you previously have talked about how if men are described as villains, they're seen as assertive. But if that label is given to women, it's seen in a negative light. Would you agree with Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, on this then?
Well, first of all, I can't wait to read both Harry's book and to see what new projects they have to come out. I have to tell you that I have met Meghan in the past in Hollywood during my days in entertainment, and she was always very lovely, very professional. And so I think that when statements that she makes are taken out of context, that sometimes the perception is, negative. I haven't had a chance to review what you're asking me, and so I'm going to refrain from having an opinion on it, but I will say that my encounters with Meghan Markle in the past have always been overwhelmingly positive.
Answer there. Marissa Manigault-Newman, really good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today. A person has been arrested for causing a public nuisance after a lorry crashed on the M25. The incident happened earlier while Just Stop Oil protests were taking place. Essex police haven't confirmed whether it was the result of activists, and the cause of the accident is still unclear.
NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg will visit 10 Downing Street later for a meeting with Prime Minister Sunak. Ahead of that meeting, the PM has said that peace in the UK cannot be taken for granted while Putin wages war on Ukraine.
A leading charity is warning that the cost of living crisis is driving food banks to breaking point, with record-breaking levels of need. The Trussell Trust says almost 1.3 million emergency parcels were handed out in 6 months this year, with almost 500,000 going to children.
Now, the United Nations has said that the life of the jailed British-Egyptian activist Alaa Abd and have demanded the Egyptian government release him immediately.
Well, Al-Fatah was sentenced last December for 5 years on charges of spreading false news. He's been on hunger strike for 220 days since April, and he stopped drinking water on Sunday. Well, joining us now is his sister, Mona Saif. Mona, this must be such a worrying time for you and your family. What's the latest that you know about your brother's condition?
Thank you for having me first. We don't have any news of Alaa, basically, since we received his letter Monday of last week, in which he was informing us that he's escalating his hunger strike to a full hunger strike, and starting Sunday with the beginning of the in Egypt right now, he is also going on a water strike. As we speak right now, my mother is heading to the prison. She has been doing so for the past 2 days. We were supposed to have a letter on Monday. It's our weekly family letter. So this was going to be our proof that he is alive, that he's cognitively present, and sadly we didn't get a letter. So for the past 3 days, my mother has been spending all mornings until evening in front of the prison waiting for the letter, and every time she goes home without a letter. And sadly as well, we have not had any other information about his health, his well-being from the UK consular team in Cairo. No one seems to know what's happening to my brother, and it seems to be as if he has disappeared into this void that is the judicial system and the prison system in Egypt under Abdel Fattah Sisi's ruling.
Now, I know that the British government have used COP27 to raise this issue. We've heard that the Foreign Secretary has been raising it with his counterparts there, and indeed the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who headed to Egypt on Sunday night and into Monday, wrote a letter to you this week. How reassured were you by that? That this is being dealt with at the top of government?
We were very reassured at that point when we received the letter and when we received the call with James Cleverly, because we kind of felt that finally Alaa's case is becoming a top priority and that COP27 might be the actual opportunity to save him. But I have to tell you that we got a bit disappointed and worried when Rishi Sunak actually met with Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in COP27. They issued a statement repeating what has been happening for the past few months. So they have raised the issue, they have talked about Ali, but they have not reached an actual solution. And we are running out of time. Today is fourth day. Ali is not drinking water. We don't have anything about him, as we just said. And honestly, the moment I knew Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, left Egypt and returned to UK, the moment I felt my heart drop, because if he did not return here to UK with my brother, I don't think Ali will be actually saved alive.
What are your biggest concerns about your brother being held there? What are you worried about in terms of his treatment there?
Everything, sadly. Ali has been tortured when he was first arrested in September. The complaints about his torture were completely dismissed by Egyptian authorities. In COP27, the Egyptian foreign minister is, first of all, not acknowledging his British citizenship. He's insisting Ali is not on hunger strike. He's insisting Ali is getting medical care, and all of this is not true. 3 months ago, they even forged, the prison authorities forged a medical report and handed it to the British government, even though Ali was not subjected to any medical examination. So at this point, everything is possible with this regime. There are rumors that he might be force-fed. There are rumors that he has deteriorated. He might be still cognitive and present and something else is happening, but the fact that they are not sharing any information with us and just keeping my mother waiting for hours every day in the prison in the middle of the desert, and the fact that even the UK government is incapable of, getting any concrete information about his health is extremely worrying.
Yeah, look, desperately difficult for you all as a family. We talk a little bit about what he's accused of, because the allegation that he was spreading fake news. He was a human rights activist. Those in the human rights world would say that what he was doing was heroic. Tell us a little bit about the allegations, the trial, the charges, and his incarceration.
So the technical charge is spreading false rumors, and the actual evidence is a Facebook post not written by him, written by someone else, about a testimony relating to abuses committed to political prisoners in Egyptian prisons, and Ali shared it. So this is the technical thing. So for sharing this Facebook post, he got sentenced to 5 years in prison. He faced an emergency court, which means that the sentence is final. It cannot be appealed. We did not have access to the case file, so the lawyers were practically being forced to propose a defense for Ali without knowing what is actually there. And even with all of that in mind, they did not finalize the trial. The judge just sentenced him to 5 years, and his lawyer, who was with him in the same case, to 4 years, and another independent journalist to 4 years as well. But the actual thing is, since Abdel Fattah al-Sisi came to power end of 2013, he has been making it his mission to put every vocal voice that has risen in 2011, when there was the uprising and the Arab Spring, to prison, and to set an example out of them, especially people who are courageous and who write so powerfully, like my brother, who is a writer, about and sort of transpire our generation's aspirations and also our struggle. So Ali has been in prison for the past 9 years, and every time he finishes a sentence, they conjure up a new case against him.
Well, we desperately hope you get that proof of life that you so desperately want. Let us know any updates on the story. Mona Saif, sister of Alaa El Fattah, who, as she says, has been in jail now for 9 years. Thank you very much indeed.
Now we'll have more top stories and a review of the newspapers after this short break.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. Further showers today, especially in the west, once again, just like yesterday. But there'll be a better chance of some sunny spells and some longer-lasting drier interludes compared with the last couple of days. The weather is certainly changeable at the moment. That's because we've got all these westerlies coming in from the Atlantic, low pressure in charge, and various weather fronts at play. But actually, these old fronts are not causing too many problems, I think. They're mostly showery features. And as we start off the day, northern England, parts of Wales in particular, will be subject to quite a number of showers, some more prolonged rain in places. By the time we get to the afternoon, though, there'll be a better chance of gaps between the showers, some sunny spells, and some places might not see that showers, certainly compared with the last couple of days. 15 Celsius in the south, 12 Celsius for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales, with less of a gusty wind compared with the last couple of days, so that might help make it feel a bit more pleasant where we managed to dodge the showers. all change, though, later in the day because the showers ease away, but thicker clouds arrive from the north and the west, and as a result, we're going to see some light outbreaks of rain over western hills, some more persistent rain for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. But with the breeze picking up from the southwest, well, that's a mild direction, and as a result, temperatures are rising. It's a mild start to Thursday. And for southeastern areas in particular, it's a mostly dry day. There'll be some breaks with that cloud, some sunshine coming through. However, the cloud will always be thickest towards the west and the northwest. We'll see some light outbreaks of rain over the hills and some more persistent wet weather for the northwest of Scotland. It's a breezy day, but actually, with that breeze coming from the southwest, it is going to be milder once again, 16 Celsius in the south or even 17 Celsius. And that trend continues through Friday and the weekend. Unsettled in the northwest, drier in the southeast, but very mild for all of us.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's
News channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
peak excitement in the
Yeah.
studio right now.
That's
I don't know
Santa's
about you.
grotto.
We love Christmas, and we've got some presents to share with you. I don't know if you have fond memories from your childhood of ripping open the wrapping paper, your favourite presents. Maybe it was a doll or a new game or some sort of playhouse.
Now, with so much choice on the market these days, it's hard to know what kids really want.
But the Toy Retailers Association may have the answer. They've published their annual list of must-have toys this Christmas. I'm making notes, let me tell you.
Yep.
Combining aspects like price, of course, cost of living crisis, we're all very conscious of that, and quality to ensure that that recommendation will not disappoint.
Well, to tell us more and even show off some of the best toys on offer this winter, we're joined by Dream Toys spokesperson Rosie Marshall. Well, Rosie, you've got a very cool job here. What makes a dream toy? How does it make the list?
So the list is compiled. We've got a list of 72, and there's a list of top 12. These are the top 12 toys that are here. So these are what we predict will be the hottest toys. So it's all the trends that we've seen this year. So we've got some Pokemon Elite Trainer set. We've got Barbie, which is really strong. We've got Paw Patrol vehicles as well, which is just over on that side. And then new to this year is Gabby's Doll's House, which has been really successful on Netflix.
Right, so I've got kids that sort of target for this, a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and actually even my 7-year-old boy loves Gabby's Doll's House. So people who don't know at home, this is a girl who turns into a pussycat. So she starts doing the stuff as a human and talking to camera. It's kind of like a YouTube channel vibe. And then she turns into a pussycat, and this is like the little cat's house, the doll's house on the show. But it costs a pretty penny. In cost of living crisis, you'd be shelling out nearly 80 quid for this.
It is the most expensive item on the top 12. It's $79.99. That's a recommended retail price. However, we have got items such as Squishmallows for $7.99, got $10.99 Gujitsus. So while the $79.99 might be out of reach for some parents, it will still be affordable for others. And actually half of the list, 6 of the toys out of the top 12 are under £30. So we were very conscious when we were choosing the list about products, and obviously they should be ones that are offer value for money and are affordable for everyone. And even the 72 list has got items under £5, so there is something for every parent.
Okay. And parents will be watching their budget this year, perhaps more than ever. What are the kids looking for, Rosie? What are the most popular items?
So I mentioned Barbie. So the cutie reveal is really nice. So that's Barbie in a costume with 10 accessories with pets.
And Barbie always does well. Why?
It does. She's had a resurgence the last few years, so she's much more inclusive and diverse. So there's a Barbie with a prosthetic leg, Barbie with a hearing aid. So every child can relate to that, and there's it's representative of every child.
What does cutie reveil mean?
It's because it's in a costume, so you don't know what you're getting until...
Oh, I don't like that. I like to see what I'm buying.
A lot of it's element
I
of
couldn't
surprise.
see my Barbie.
See the Barbie doll, yeah.
A lot of it's surprise.
OK, just seeing what you're buying, I know automatically my little girl would love this little pet guinea pig in a box, if we can turn that to the camera. So this is the Little Live Pets Mama Surprise. Again, pricey at $64.99. But for those who can't actually handle a real-life animal, this would be quite cute.
Saves on the vet bill, yeah.
Saves on the vet bill.
So this one's brilliant. So it's a mother guinea pig. You feed it, love her, put her in the cage, and then 3 babies appear over a period of time.
Can I
so
hold
that's really
her?
nice. You can.
Can we
go
get her
for it.
out? Yeah. I used to have guinea pigs growing up, so I really want to hold her. Don't worry, I don't want to break it for you. Oh, look, I'm causing chaos with the set. But the idea is that you perhaps would learn how to look after her.
Yeah, you nurture her, look after her,
very
feed
easily.
her.
Don't worry.
Don't worry.
It is difficult, Rosie. I'm just being demanding, really. Oh, look, here she comes.
You see, when we were young, you used to get Tamagotchis, or maybe you're too young for that, Ellie, but Tamagotchis, cute! These tiny little toys that were just, like, digital. This is way better. Way better. So what you groom it?
Yeah, so you love her, you pet her, feed her, and then she glows, her little heart glows, and then when it glows, you put it in the cage, you shut the cage, and then the babies will appear.
Oh, really? She has babies?
Oh,
my God.
3 babies.
And she's got little paws and everything. Yeah, this is our favourite one.
Well, yeah, but the other one, and again, I don't know why I keep picking the expensive ones, but can you tell me,
taste.
why is Lego so expensive? I mean, it really is. It's 45 quid for this Star Wars piece that you've chosen on the end to the director, in case he's wondering where it is. There were so many presents, like Santa's grotto. Like
yeah, it's great.
You know, I do a lot of kids' birthday parties, and almost every weekend I'm taking presents to kids' parties. It costs a fortune to buy Lego.
I think Lego is a good heritage brand, though, and it's something everyone's got some in their loft. So I think it's something that is kept and it is passed on and played with. So I think it's definitely good value. And I guess that one will be also for big kids, not just small kids that will want that set.
Rosie, look at this one, please.
course you
I'm
can.
being the child here. I'm like, can we
Yeah,
play with
yeah.
this one now? But look at this one. So this is a very popular one on the market this year, isn't it? This is Gigi the giraffe.
Yes.
And maybe turn around, because this is...
Oh, if you hold that up, because the camera can't quite
turn
see all the
that
action.
up a little bit.
Oh, I'll press it
If
again.
you could do that again.
So this is the disco giraffe. And you just
and
spin
turn it around again. There you go. Looks like Big Bird from Sesame Street rather than a giraffe to me. But that you can see that driving people mad on Christmas Day.
Yeah, I think it's good fun, though.
Yeah, great fun. So, Rosie, what advice then would you give to parents who are perhaps watching or listening at home and thinking, my gosh, this is a lot of pressure. There's some amazing things here, but, you know, the budget is tight this year. What's the advice then for getting a bargain and keeping the kids happy?
There are some amazing toys here, and there is something within everyone's budget. If there's something you like on this list and you can buy it, then we would urge you to buy it now. If there's something that you would like on the list, but perhaps maybe like Gabby's Doll's House, there's smaller products available in the range, so there are alternatives within that. But the best advice would be to go to your local toy specialist, where there's toy experts who can talk you through what your budget is and also what the child likes, and find something suitable.
I always find presents more expensive in children's toy shops.
I think it's a misconception, actually, because people think online's cheaper, and it's not necessarily.
Oh, right. So where would you say is the best place to get a bargain, then, when it comes to the presents?
I think if you go into stores, you'd be surprised, and if you looked at the prices, I think they're actually much more competitive than online, and you get that advice as well. There's such an array of choice, so I think that's the place to go.
That's clear.
Top tips. OK, Rosie Marshall, thank you for that. That was really fun. I hope my
That was
girl
really
wasn't
fun.
watching, because what's the time? I should be off to schools. Steal some of these ideas.
I don't envy you. It's a tough job.
Well, it's the godchildren, 7 godchildren between us.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yes,
too much.
Children.
Take your pick now. Stuff it under the desk.
We're going to take a break whilst I stuff toys into my bag, and we'll be back after the break with David Miller and Emma Wolf. See you in a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Oh, there's been a lot of excitement here this morning, hasn't it? Time is just coming up to 20 minutes to 9. It's time to go through your papers now. Joining us this morning is former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor.
We should point out, has already sorted his Christmas present for his granddaughter.
Very organised, David.
Yeah. We won't give it away. Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
And the journalist Emma Wolfe, and you've been brilliant this morning, both of you. So, David, first of all, important questions. What did you get your granddaughter for Christmas?
Oh, no, I don't think you can give
Oh, no, we can't. She might be listening.
She watches sometimes.
We'll ignore that.
She's a precocious 4-year-old.
Right.
I can imagine.
Let's get on with some work then instead.
You couldn't imagine that.
I don't know.
No, we'll do some work instead. We'll pretend I never asked that. So let's talk about Gavin Williamson, shall we? So he quit last night after allegations of bullying. This is in The Times. Was this inevitable?
It's all over the place, yes. I just thought, some of our faithful viewers are not around for the 6 o'clock hour, and that this is the big story, because it raises so many different things. First of all, how a twat like Williamson...
OK, I'm not sure you can use that word. Yeah, let's try another word.
A twit.
Twerp. Twerp's fine.
Twerp, like Williamson, be given... Another Prime Minister gets a chance to sack him. That's 3 in all. And it is depressing, the low quality of people that can get into the Cabinet these days, and that impacts, I think, on their ability to take decisions. But the other problem, of course, is that Williamson really taints the man who appointed him. You see, I'd rather hoped that the new Prime Minister would be able to push away all the things that made such a misery of the life of Boris Johnson and of Liz Truss, but instead of which he clutches these people to his bosom. See, I rather like Suella Braverman. I think she's tough, but having done what she did in terms of being careless with public information, you've got to serve as a period when your sins are washed away. And the fact he brought her back, and the fact that he then brings back Williamson, all it means is that he himself is tainted as a result of this. And in fact, if you look at the Times, Sunak's judgment in question in this analysis, and the final paragraph says Sunak's problem is that he is inexperienced while not being that powerful politically. It's a real worry.
Yeah, in power, but not in control, perhaps. I mean, he is only 42. He was obviously Chancellor throughout a pretty significant period in our history. But do you agree that his judgment has been marred by this?
He has, yeah, you're right, he has political experience. There's a kind of combination of naivety, I think, and also stubbornness in Rishi Sunak. It's sort of odd. He didn't really... It's a sort of nothing job that Gavin Williamson was appointed to. It was a sort of unnecessary appointment.
Exactly.
Except for maybe keeping him on side.
So true.
But it wasn't a created appointment, though. I mean, that was a position that's been held by lots of other people.
But having made the mistake, which people make mistakes, he should have acted decisively. The minute those texts came out, the first allegations last week, he should... And there was no kind of question in Westminster of whether or not Gavin Williamson was a wrong-un. He should have acted decisively, instead of which it's gone on for a week. Gavin Williamson, it looks like, has resigned himself rather than Rishi. And David is absolutely right. It leaves Sunak tainted, whereas his first couple of weeks should have been calm, bit of a honeymoon period, that old cliché.
Yeah.
I think that it does raise questions about Rishi Sunak's kind of capacity as a political operator.
That's right.
Well, not least after he made that comment on the step, as you point out, Ellie. There is only the one step of Downing Street, where he said this is going to be a professional government with highest regard for integrity. And as you say, not taking a strong line on this.
And this is deeply unpleasant. And in the current climate, it is not acceptable. Of course, whips are bullies. Yes, we understand about bullies and enforcers. But Gavin Williamson, that stuff is deeply unpleasant. It's very threatening. And in the current modern, in the modern climate, and we all talk about mental health, and we all talk about people needing help and all of that, it is not acceptable to tell people to basically go and commit suicide or to threaten them or to bully in any way.
I was obviously a failure because I spent 11 years as minister and never told anyone to jump out of the window or whatever. It isn't necessary to be abusive to your civil servants. Most of the civil servants I worked with, I got on with very well, and I was very glad that they were around. But this is where I think Rishi Sunak is a hugely talented person. I will be very disappointed if he isn't a successful Prime Minister. One of the reasons why he won't be a successful Prime Minister, if he turns out not to be, is he doesn't have somebody telling him what he needs to know. I know I make this point too often, and shut me up if I'm becoming dull and repetitive and back to the care home, but I tell you that Margaret Thatcher needed somebody to tell her what she wouldn't know about what was happening in a tea room. And so William Whitelaw was the person, her deputy, who would tell her things, and she had the sense most of the time to listen to him. I don't believe if there was a tough, experienced person who Rishi Sunak trusted, we would ever have seen Gavin Williamson again. Because all of this stuff about what Gavin Williamson said when he was at the Ministry of Defence was all out there, around in the bars and whatever. And to be not brought down, but brought low by this kind of nonsense is sad and avoidable.
Yes, it is. And I mean, it's going to be an open goal, isn't it, for Labour at PMQs a little bit later on today. Perhaps the timing of that resignation statement significant, so that was clear for Rishi Sunak for PMQs. But as you say, I mean, for somebody who talks about integrity, very, very difficult when there's questions about Gavin Williamson and Suella Braverman. And we're only, 2 weeks in? 3 weeks into the Premiership?
That's the point.
It's difficult. OK, Emma, let's have a look at the Mirror, shall we? And the story there about food prices, quite shocking statistics, actually. Food bills set to rise by £682 a year.
Yeah, the headline is Shop of Horrors. And this is, people are talking about, has inflation reached its peak and whatever. Food prices are still absolutely soaring. I think anyone who's been to the supermarket recently will be amazed at the way things are just going up 20, 30%. It could maybe only be 20 pence, but for the basics, for things like, rice, potatoes, bread, meat, milk, all the staples that people rely on, food prices are going through the roof. And this is a report in the Mirror saying that food prices, as you say, on average, expected to increase £680 over the next year. Grocery price inflation is hitting 14.7%. So we talk about inflation being around 10%, but in terms of certain things, food prices, energy bills, it's nearly at 15%. Yeah. And of course, this is hitting poorer families harder. Inflation hasn't peaked. There's no sense of when food prices will actually kind of settle or where they will settle. And this survey in the Mirror is very interesting, a Kantar survey. It's saying that a quarter of households are now struggling financially. Yeah. A lot of consumers switching to own brands, to cheaper labels.
Or indeed food banks, as we were reporting in the Bulletin this morning. And a lot of those people using food banks are people who are in work.
Who are working, who are bringing up children, who are literally wondering, eating or eating, that kind of thing.
I was in a food bank last week doing a story on this, and the lady that ran the food bank was telling me that a quarter of people through the door are working people, and the food is up, as you say, in pasta and oil, I think it's something like 60%. So for working people even, just getting food on the table for their children is proving impossible.
And it's not a luxury. Food and heating, we hope, are these things that absolutely everybody has to go, they have to buy food, and it's a real worry. We're coming.
And I know you ladies are looking at each other because you assume a prat like me wouldn't know anything about that, but I do the family food shopping.
Do you?
And I have to tell you, I have been quite shocked. It's not the price of luxury items, it's the price of basic commodities. Yeah. And I ask myself, how can people cope with this kind of increase?
Well,
it's noticeable for those of us who can afford it. For those who can't afford it, it's seriously awful. And that's why inflation has got to be driven down. And inflation on basic foodstuffs, particularly so, because a lot of this stuff is not imported. It's produced in the UK, and yet something has got caught up in the food chain that drives these prices up to a totally unreasonable level.
But in the context of all of that, David, the next story which you've chosen from The Telegraph, which is about the Tories will regret joining the assault on Middle England's wealth, and it's something Sarah Vine's talking about in the Mail as well today, saying why is it always the middle classes that have to pick up the bills in these situations? But in the context of what we're just saying, of food costing a fortune, you know, ordinary working people going to food banks, someone's got to shoulder the burden.
Yes, well, but I think that there's got to be some... Well, first of all, just to say, Philip Johnson, I always read his stuff, and I think one of the things where newspapers are most valuable is not the news, because often the news is hours out of date compared to what you can get on the television, but it's the commentary. And the good commentators in the papers, I mean, I feel like they're friends of mine, and I read what they say and listen. But you see, what he's really saying is this: the Treasury just cannot resist plundering that great heap of accumulated wealth sitting there ostensibly to enable people to enjoy a decent retirement without relying entirely on state benefits. Now, you've got to have some people in this our society who are self-reliant. And also, one of the fundamental things about being a Conservative, at least that's what I used to think, maybe it's changed since my dismal day so many years ago, is that you have to look after yourself and your family. You pay your taxes, but essentially you do not look to somebody else to bail you out. And if we increase the proportion of people who, often through no fault of their own, have to be bailed out, and we lose the proportion of people who can get by, then we've got real problems. And what Philip Johnson is saying is, how can you manage to sustain yourself when all of these allowances that are supposed to go up, tax-free allowance, all of that stuff, they're not going up? It's an easy hit for the Treasury, but it's a cheap shot as well.
Look, we've run out of time, guys. I'm really sorry. We have to leave it there. Emma Wolfe, David Mellor, it's been a pleasure, as always. We do need to just say, once again, terribly sorry for some of the language this morning during that paper review.
Now, you've heard of the Lionesses, but how about the Flyonesses? Yes, they're a team of British women who've won gold at the World Parachuting Championships.
And Alice Porter is with them now as they train for their next competition. I'm really excited. I think I can see somebody flying around behind you.
You can indeed. I have to say, if I'm looking a little bit windswept and I've got goggle marks, it's just because I have actually been having a go. But I decided to leave it to the professionals. Two of them are doing extraordinary work in this wind tunnel. They come here to do so much training ahead of the World Championships, which took place just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I have to say, it has been extraordinary just to watch them in action, and even more extraordinary to have a bit of a go. And I have to say, it is so much harder than it looks. Can you imagine about a million hairdryers blowing at your face whilst you're trying to look cool and do all this amazing routine, none of which, of course, I understand. But I'm hoping two women next to me here who have both received gold medals in the World Championships can join me now. Anna and Varna, thank you so much for letting me come along today. Firstly, congratulations on becoming World Championships.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. I mean, how did you both get into such an unusual sport, I guess?
I actually saw the original Point Break film about 20 years ago, showing my age now, and there's a big long skydiving scene in it, the original film with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. And it's got a ridiculously long skydiving scene in it, and I thought, I want to do that. That's really cool. And so I did. So when I was on an army medical placement, trauma placement in the States, I then flew myself down to Florida, paid to learn to skydive, and the rest is history.
Because whilst being sort of, world champions in a sport, you also, almost all of you have sort of full-time jobs as well. I mean, what do you both do when you're not sort of throwing yourself out of planes and having wind tunnels sort of as you fly past?
So I'm a sports therapist, and basically that's what I do in the daytime. But we use as much leave and as much time as possible to train and skydive. And this year, in fact, we've done over 500 skydives together, which is a lot of days of training. So it's all the weekends, any time off is spent skydiving, basically, and or flying in the morning. And Anna, so our other teammates, Kath, she's full-time NHS dietitian. She
he works in IT. Sean is a full-time skydiver, and Simon, our camera flyer, he's IT as well. And I'm a military GP and aesthetics doctor, so medicine. So it's all. Luckily, most of us are freelance, but some of them, especially Kath, because she's NHS, we've been squeezing all her.
2016 in Chicago, and then a silver medal in Australia in 2018. So we've been trying to work towards this for so long now. But it was just because we've done so much training, and the team is really united. Basically, we've worked so hard this year. We actually arrived fairly confident that we would do well, and the competition was France and America who've beaten us before, so we were just kind of on a mission to do that, and the 10 rounds were just really good. We do 10 jumps basically for the competition, and they were.
Well, congratulations to both of you, and thank you so much for letting me come along today and have a go. My embarrassment of having a go at the skydiving will be available on GB News later today.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Alice. Really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we're back with the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan. See you in a moment.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. Further showers today, especially in the west, once again, just like yesterday. But there'll be a better chance of some sunny spells and some longer-lasting drier interludes compared with the last couple of days. The weather is certainly changeable at the moment. That's because we've got all these westerlies coming in from the Atlantic, low pressure in charge, and various weather fronts at play. But actually, these old fronts are not causing too many problems, I think. They're mostly showery features. And as we start off the day, northern England, parts of Wales in particular, will be subject to quite a number of showers, some more prolonged rain in places. By the time we get to the afternoon, though, there'll be a better chance of gaps between the showers, some sunny spells, and some places might not see that many showers, certainly compared with the last couple of days. 15 Celsius in the south, 12 Celsius for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales, with less of a gusty wind compared with the last couple of days, so that might help make it feel a bit more pleasant where we managed to dodge the showers. All change, though, later in the day because the showers ease away, but thicker clouds arrive from the north and the west, and as a result, we're going to see some light outbreaks of rain over western hills, some more persistent rain for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. But with the breeze picking up from the southwest, well, that's a mild direction, and as a result, temperatures are rising. It's a mild start to Thursday. And for southeastern areas in particular, it's a mostly dry day. There'll be some breaks with that cloud, some sunshine coming through. However, the cloud will always be thickest towards the west and the northwest. We'll see some light outbreaks of rain over the hills and some more persistent wet weather for the northwest of Scotland. It's a breezy day, but actually, with that breeze coming from the southwest, it is going to be milder once again, 16 Celsius in the south or even 17 Celsius. And that trend continues through Friday and the weekend. Unsettled in the northwest, drier in the southeast, but very mild for all of us.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
Gavin Williamson resigns from government amid continued bullying allegations.
A very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 9th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Sir Gavin Williamson has resigned as a government minister following a series of allegations that he bullied civil servants and MPs. In his resignation letter, he refuted the accusations and vowed to clear his name.
The first results from the US midterms are rolling in, with the key seat of Pennsylvania being taken by the Democrats. The Republicans are set to win the lower house of Congress, but the race for control of the Senate is hanging in the balance. We have all the latest for you.
The first picture of Matt Hancock in his jungle uniform has been released as he prepares to join I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. The former health secretary has said the jungle is a metaphor for the world he works in.
My eyes. It's going to get worse as well, isn't it?
You're going to see a lot more than that, is he?
Stay in touch. I hope it's not going to be the shower cam. No. Could avoid that, couldn't we? Let us know your thoughts throughout the programme. We'd love to hear from you. Get involved on Twitter or email.
Lord Frost says he fears that the government are returning to George Osborne-style austerity and that raising taxes into recession when interest rates are rising poses a real risk of a vicious economic spiral.
Well, speaking exclusively to our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan said that Frost had warned that the net zero 2050 agenda championed at COP27 is, and I quote, unrealistic.
Well, Liam Halligan joins us now for more on that exclusive interview. Liam, how was it?
Well, Lord Frost, he hasn't been in government, but he is a household name. He's extremely influential across Parliament. He sits in the House of Lords. And he sat down with me yesterday here in the GB News studios, and we talked initially about COP27. Lord Frost has just become a trustee of something called the Global Warming Policy Forum. Now, he says that, you know, almost everybody rightly, in his view, thinks that there is climate change and that human behaviour has had a big role in that climate change. But he's particularly concerned that the costs of the adjustment away from fossil fuels is falling disproportionately on poorer people, and that we're rushing too fast towards the Net 50 agenda. When I asked him specifically about COP27, this is what he said.
I'm doubtful, I've got to say. I don't think that rushing at the 2050 deadline, as we have it in the UK and Europe, is necessarily going to work. I don't think the technologies are quite ripe yet. It's too easy to say all we need to do is have more wind farms and more solar until we get the ability to store power, until the intermittency problem is solved, really properly solved. I struggle to see that these technologies are going to do everything we want and that they'll be useful in more than a marginal way. I think the right way of going at this is gas to nuclear and lots of research into other possibilities. And I don't know whether that is consistent with 2050. I'm doubtful.
Talking about other possibilities, we saw Boris Johnson at COP27 having a pop at fracking. He's not in favour of it. What did Lord Frost have to say about fracking?
He said he would like to see us at least having a go at fracking. And also, you'll have seen in the news in recent days, Isabel, that Rishi Sunak has been highlighting that the UK is going to be relying increasingly for our energy security on gas imported all the way from the United States, fracked gas imported from the United States that's then turned into liquefied natural gas, put in those ships, huge cost, transported 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. And Lord Frost said, in his view, there's a certain hypocrisy about relying on fracked gas from the US while banning fracking here in the UK. Here he is.
I'm personally in favour of at least trying fracking and seeing if we can do that. And I think there's a degree of hypocrisy in those who won't do fracking in the UK but are perfectly happy to import large quantities of fracked gas from the US or Qatar or wherever else. I think it is just a bit kind of unreasonable to look at it in that way. We should be responsible for our own security of supply as far as we possibly can.
So just over a week to go until that autumn statement. Did Lord Frost say anything to you about what we can expect from that?
He did, very much so, Ellie. So Lord Frost was a backer of Liz Truss. He's a kind of small state Conservative. He believes in low taxes. He's alarmed, and a lot of the Tory backbenchers are alarmed, that we already have the highest tax burden here in the UK, tax as a share of our national income, in 70 years. And all the signs are that on November the 17th, Rishi Sunak and Chancellor Jeremy Hunt are going to push that tax burden even higher, not least by freezing thresholds further on income tax, maybe inheritance tax. And Lord Frost, in the final clip that we'll play for now, Ellie, he said that his concern is that with the UK on the brink of a recession, with interest rates rising, to hit firms and households now with higher taxes could make the situation worse.
I mean, there's a real risk of raising taxes into a recession, especially when interest rates, so monetary policy is getting tighter as well. There are very few examples, if any, in the world of countries that have consolidated their way into growing. What tends to happen more is budgetary consolidation begins to slow growth, crush the economy. You therefore have to consolidate even further, and you get onto a vicious cycle. And some of the Eurozone countries have got into that at times.
Do you think we're in a danger
in
of a vicious downward spiral?
I mean, I don't know yet. I think you just got to be cautious when it's clear that economic conditions are getting worse, that we're not making our own life more difficult.
So he is a bit of a talisman, Lord Frost. Until a few years ago, he was only known in Westminster and Whitehall, but then he became a household name during the Brexit negotiations. I'll be speaking more throughout the day about my exclusive GB News interview with Lord Frost. But if viewers and listeners want to hear the full 15-minute version, they can do that on the Money Talks podcast and app and the GB News YouTube channel.
OK, Liam Halligan,
thank
you so much. Well, look, we can speak to the government Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, who joins us now. Of course, Gavin Williamson, famously a previous holder of that office. I think you're the 5th Education Secretary, aren't you, in fewer months. Your views on his resignation last night?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably a good thing. I mean, you know, what he said is he didn't want to be a distraction. Clearly, as you were just hearing from Lord Frost, there's a lot of things that the government has to navigate, a lot of difficult things, not only climate change, the war in Ukraine, but of course those economic challenges that he was talking about. So I think, you know, it's probably he's done the right thing by saying it will be a distraction and he'll go to the backbenches to fully engage with that independent process.
Gillian, people will be asking the question, should Gavin Williamson have even been in Cabinet in the first place? I mean, all you need to do is take one look at his ministerial record. 2019, he was sacked at Defence. 2021, he was sacked at Education. And just last night, he resigned from Cabinet office after just 2 weeks. And Rishi Sunak has spoke on a step of Downing Street, talking about integrity and professionalism and accountability. It was meant to be this great reset moment, wasn't it? And it's almost as though Gavin Williamson kind of let the side down.
Well, I mean, it is a reset moment, and obviously we do have a very strong cabinet. I mean, Rishi's got a cabinet with lots of talent, lots of people who've been there before, and then lots of fresh faces like myself. But, you know, the reality is this does sometimes happen in politics. It's unfortunate. I mean, I think Peter Mandelson made more comebacks than Frank Sinatra. This does happen occasionally. Not something that you welcome, not something I hope will happen to me, but it isn't entirely unusual. And that's because of the political scrutiny, because of the pressure, and also because of the you know, the various you know, changes that go on and that you have to respond to very quickly.
Lots of people will be thinking that this is the beginning of the end of the honeymoon for our new Prime Minister, and that's going to come to an abrupt end, surely, with next week's autumn statement. We've already got the highest tax burden in this country since the 50s. That's set to go up. Lots of talk in the papers about how on earth that's going to be done, talking about the top-rated tax going up to 50 pence. We've got lots of talk about stealth tax, inheritance tax. The Telegraph saying Conservatives will regret going after Middle England, and the Daily Mail also saying it beggars belief. Hunt is mad to go after the wealth creators and savers.
Well, they're all speculating 1 week and 1 day before the Chancellor actually delivers his statement. So clearly you're going to have to wait for the statement to know what it is. But we do understand all the parameters of this. You know, I think Rishi spent the whole summer going round basically saying how difficult this was and that he was going to be honest with people and face up to what are hard truths that people don't always want to hear. But the reality is leadership means that you need to show that, you know, show that honesty and integrity and be upfront with people about the challenges. Not just us, let's be fair, it's not just us, it's people all over the globe are facing the same challenge. You know, the moral of the story is you can't close down the world's economy, not just ours, for 2 years and not have an impact, and then have your first war in Europe in 70 years and it not impact in any way. These things are impacting very deeply, whether it is you know, the impacts in the recovery from the pandemic, or whether it's the impact on the energy prices, and of course, and more importantly, the people in Ukraine, you know, the impact of this war. So there are very difficult things that we have to go through, and you know, I think we've got by far the best leader to do that.
Gillian, you may have just been hearing here in the studio Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor, with his exclusive interview with Lord Frost. He was talking about raising taxes into a recession, which is obviously what's due to happen in the upcoming autumn statement. He warns, Lord Frost does, that this will cause a vicious downward cycle. He says you have to be cautious when economic conditions are getting worse, that we are not making people's situation worse. What's your reaction to those comments?
Well, of course, they're difficult balancing acts, and that's exactly what the Chancellor is doing right now, trying to balance all of those things. No easy decisions here. This is very, very difficult, challenging times. And, you know, of course, mistakes were made in the previous with the previous Prime Minister and the previous budget, and we need to make sure that we don't make those mistakes again.
what's your own view on the triple lock? I mean, no one was ever expecting when this pledge was drawn up that inflation would be so high. Can the government really afford £11 billion to pensioners at a time when you've got workers turning up at the Trussell Trust and a quarter of people using food banks, actually people in working poverty?
Well, this is the big questions for the Chancellor. That's exactly what the
what's your
Chancellor's
own
doing.
view?
And of course, you'll understand that. Well, you will understand that that would be really unhelpful for me to do that. So you're going to have to wait. It's only a week and a day. So a week tomorrow, you will get the autumn statement, and obviously there'll be lots of us out and about on the media explaining why we've made the choices that we've made. But I don't know what those choices are.
Gillian, I wanted to ask your reaction to what we've seen this morning, reports of a policeman who's been injured at a Just Stop Oil protest. Not clear yet what the details of that are, but we're also seeing reports of a journalist that was arrested whilst doing her job. What's your reaction to what we're seeing and hearing, and your reaction in general to the Just Stop Oil protesters?
Well, the Just Stop Oil protesters, obviously they have, they're causing mass disruption now and possibly making people unsafe. I haven't seen either of these stories in any detail, but it's deeply concerning if somebody has been injured and a policeman's been injured. We have COP27 going on. If you are serious and want to be constructive about climate change, about making those changes, then if you are serious about that, you should be going to COP27. You should be constructively engaging with that dialogue, not sticking yourself to parts of the M25.
Have police arresting journalists either, I'm sure. Look, I have to ask you about Matt Hancock. He's gone into the jungle. He's talked about how snakes are his biggest fear. He's also talked about how the jungle represents his place of work. What could he be saying there, do you think?
Oh, I've no idea, but it certainly doesn't represent the place of work that I go into every day. But I would not sign up to go into the jungle for anything, no. I would leave the snakes and the creepy crawlies to Matt.
OK, Gillian Keegan, Education Secretary. Thanks for being a good sport. Good to talk to you this morning.
Now, coming up, we'll be getting the verdict on the new series of The Crown from Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield. But first, here's the weather for you.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Now, after months of anticipation, quite frankly, free PR in terms of all the controversy, the fifth season of The Crown has officially dropped on Netflix today.
And somebody is very excited. Well, the new cast took to the red carpet here in the capital last night for the premiere of what's being called the most controversial season to date.
Well, to find out whether it really is worth all the hype, we're joined now by showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield, who's been up all night, not following the midterms, not following the elections in the States, but watching The Crown. What's it like?
Isabel, I'm doing both. I can
Okay,
multitask, girlfriend. Well, let me just say this. Speaking of that, speaking of the midterms, can I just say that I have never seen Dominic West and Nigel Farage in the same room together. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but do those two not look alike? I mean, they have that mouth.
Wow, I think Nigel Farage might enjoy that comparison.
He'll be pleased with that,
Interesting. Right, so he might look like Nigel Farage, but Kinsey, sorry. Does he actually look, is he convincing as the king?
And Elizabeth.
There's a delay on the line, I'm so sorry. We'll start again, just really quickly. So you think he looks like Farage, but how convincing is he as the new king, as Prince of Wales?
You know, that's where I struggle because he's not, to me, he's Dominic West. You know, I love him as an actor, but he doesn't really, he's not all in the way Josh O'Connor was. But because I love him as an actor, I'm just enjoying the show. But I will say Elizabeth Debicki, my goodness, the way she moves, she glides like a dancer. You know, Diana was a ballerina, and the way Elizabeth Debicki moves, she's long and lean. It's just it's like haunting to see her as Diana. And I'll say so far, it's not as controversial as I thought it was going to be. It's pretty toned down and it does not seem disrespectful yet from what I've seen. And I'm comforted by that.
And how do we feel about Imelda Staunton as Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II? I mean, big shoes to fill following Olivia Colman. But I don't know about you, I just see Professor Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter. Whenever I see her face, I'm not sure it's going to work as the Queen, but you tell me what you think. Did it work for you?
That was exactly how I felt when I first started watching it. And our very first shot is of Claire Foy, who I just absolutely adore.
Was amazing.
And I don't know if anybody's going to be as good as she, was. So to see that transition, that was very smart of them. No, she is a good queen, but we just lost the queen. So I struggle with that because I feel like I feel guilty watching it almost because we just lost the queen.
Well, it's really interesting you say that, actually, because Peter Morgan, the creator of Netflix's The Crown, has said that this might help some viewers who are mourning Her Majesty to watch her in The Crown. Is that something that you have felt?
I would not say that because The Crown is critical of this family. I mean, it's very critical of this family. But Dominic West said something interesting on the red carpet last night. He said, look, you know, we are an imaginative drama. And if you want the real story, there are 100 documentaries about Prince Charles, King Charles, the ones that he watched to prepare for his role. He said they're out there. So you can turn us off and you can turn that on. And I thought that that was a really good point to make. They're saying we're a drama. If you don't want to invest in this drama, that's fine, because there's plenty of content out there that is based on the facts, and it's that archive footage, and that's the route you can go.
Managed to watch a couple of the episodes already because there's a lot to get through. But I wonder how Camilla, our Queen Consort, will feel she's being portrayed, because I think she's about the only royal who's admitted to watching the previous series, isn't she?
Yes, I think that she has pretty thick skin. I mean, based on what she had to deal with in this time frame in real life, I do think that she's got pretty thick skin. And from what I'm seeing so far, they're pretty, I don't know, they're sympathetic towards, well, I'd actually say in season 4 too, they're pretty sympathetic towards Charles and Camilla. So I don't think that there's much to be worried about. You said, she's got a great sense of humor. She's, I think, engaged several times with the actress that played her in season 3 and season 4. And I think that she understands that it's art, it's entertainment, and she's a fan of art and entertainment. And while I do see the backlash online, I'm pretty sure that, you know, the King and Queen Consort are protected from that stuff. They have people that manage that stuff for them on social media.
Okay, interesting. Well, look, I'm sorry to have kept you away from watching The Crown. We'll let you get back to it.
Thank you.
Enjoy. I'll be doing the same, just
as
soon as I can.
When I saw that it was you two hosting, I was like, I'm going to do this from my bed. They won't care. But then I was like, oh, the lighting won't be as good.
Can we just talk about your black sheet jumper as well? I saw you talking about it on social media yesterday. Show us. There you go. There's a little black sheet jumper. Oh, we've got to go. Kinsey, we've got to go. We're staying with Royal Matters, but I'm being hurried along. Sorry. Lovely to see you.
Girls Club, isn't it? Right. We'll stay on the topic of the royals, shall we? Because the King is in York today to unveil a new statue of the late Queen.
Yeah, well, let's talk to Cameron Walker. He joins us from there with all the details. Good to see you, Cameron.
Hi Isabel, yes, the King and the Queen Consorts have a very busy 2 days here in Yorkshire. Yesterday it was all about farming, sustainability and new carbon neutral eggs at the Morrisons headquarters in Bradford. He also met young leaders, and today the King and Queen Consorts are here in York at Micklegate Bar, this magnificent 12th century tower behind me, which is the traditional place where monarchs are welcomed to the city of York. The last time this happened was when the Queen and Prince Philip visited in 2012 for her Diamond Jubilee celebrations. The crowds are already gathering here, and following that official welcome the Queen and Philip did, they went to York Minster, the cathedral here in York, for a service. And guess what? The King and Queen Consort are expected to do exactly the same. They certainly like traditions, the royal family. But perhaps more poignant is after that cathedral service, the King and Queen Consort will be unveiling a new statue of Queen Elizabeth II. It was originally intended to mark her Platinum Jubilee, but following the Queen's death, of course, it had an extra special meaning. And it's going to be part of a new urban regeneration project here in York, a new town square to try and encourage more people into the city centre. So the King and Queen Consort are expected to arrive in the next couple of hours, and we will keep you up to date on GB News all day.
Well, Cameron, thank you so much for bringing that to us. Looks like it will be a really busy day, and the crowd's already starting to gather behind Cameron there. Very exciting for them.
Enjoy. Thank you so much, Cameron. Look, just a quick chance to read a few of the views on potholes, because so many have been coming through. We talked about somebody saying that they needed a 4x4 to tackle the potholes. Well, Esme says, I have a Range Rover and it's still broke because of a pothole. Although I constantly notify the council of the issue, it seems roads are not up to the extra traffic. It's been lovely having all of your company. It's been lovely having your company. I'll be back tomorrow morning with Andrew Pearce, but up next it's Tom Harwood with The Briefing.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice, We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech